I'm calling to order the meeting of the school committee for Monday, May 20th, 2019. Mrs. Kennedy, would you please call the roll?
Mr. DeCanter?
Here.
Mr. Cole?
Here.
Mr. Menon?
Here.
Mayor Holliday?
Present.
Mr. Hawkeizer?
Here.
Mr. Reardon?
Here.
Mr. Callahan?
Here.
All present.
Thank you. Could we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
If we could do the consent agenda first. Do we have any warrants, Mr. Cole?
Yes, we have 3 warrants. The first warrant, I move that the following named bills and payrolls, the Newburyport Public Schools amounting in the aggregate $15,804.32 be approved for the city auditor to make payment and deduct the funds from the school's account. There are
Second.
no conflicts.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously.
The next warrant, I move that the following named bills of the Newburyport Public Schools amounting in the aggregate $30,040.39 be approved and forwarded to the city auditor for payment. There are no conflicts.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously.
And the last warrant, I move that the following named bills of the Newburyport Public Schools amounting in the aggregate $515,662.24 be approved and forwarded to the city auditor for payment. There are no conflicts.
Second?
Seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. We have a set of minutes that we received for May 6th. Do I have a motion to accept?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion, changes, tweaks, modifications? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes. So we'll go, we're going to hold off on student, staff, and presentation, or?
Right now.
On the agenda, we have the third item is student staff recognitions and a presentation.
Second, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
You had your hand, I couldn't tell.
Sorry.
We're going to hold off on that until they get the technologizing in a way that it's supposed to.
Ouch.
We're going to go to, hey, I'm just, downgrading public dialogue here. We've got a period of public comment. I would ask those who have, would like to share comment with the school committee and the community to come up to the microphone over there. If you would sign in with your address so that we can get the address for the record. I would ask you to keep it to 2 minutes, and usually when there are topics that are actively interested, that the community is actively interested in, we do want you to try to keep it to 2 minutes, and we do expect that questions that you ask will be asked in a civil and respectful way. People, anybody, come on up. And if you could just give us your name.
Hi, my name is Carol Meinhardt. I live at 27.5 Jefferson Street, celebrating 30 years this Memorial Day weekend. It's fun to get old, right? I'd like to talk about the valedictorian, salutatorian situation. And I became aware of dropping rankings last year, and I became interested in the fact that we would maybe be doing away with valedictorian, salutatorian. I never connected the two, that dropping rankings would mean we would not have vals and sals. And I reached out to some peers, and I'm like, did you realize? Like, no. And these are people with kids in the high school. So I'd like to make these points. My concern is the timing. I'm concerned about a situation where we say there will be no bypassing, taking that section out of the handbook, saying that our default is no val and no sal. That is my concern. It may be that that is the solution that is arrived at. It may be a different solution is arrived at. I'm concerned that next year at graduation, there'll be no valedictorian, no salutatorian, and here we are, a school. I wanted to, sorry, I can't read my own notes here. I think it might be a little premature. I'm not sure the community really understood that taking rankings out would lead to this conclusion. I think there needs to be more discussion. I have a lot of faith that maybe a creative solution might be arrived at. There's some interesting things that popped up on Facebook. My point is, what is the default situation? I'm concerned about making the default no Sal, no Val versus keeping it the way it is. We had Sal and Val the past 2 years despite the rankings situation having happened the past 2 years. I would think we should keep it until we have more clarity around what we need to do. I want to make one point about stress and depression amongst our students. Yeah, I have 2 kids in the school and they work hard and it's difficult. Tomorrow's math MCAS. That's what they're interested in. Today I got an email saying depression doesn't take a summer vacation. It affects 19% of students in the greater Newburyport area. That's a bigger problem than trying to compete for Sal or Val. I think it's a little bit difficult to conflate the pressure that our students have, whether it be socioeconomic or college, whatever, with the fact that we have Sal or Val. I think we need to be careful of arguments that have all these sort of encompassing criteria.
Could I ask you to make a summary point?
I've recommended to peers that they email members of the school committee with their thoughts on this, as some were just very surprised that this was even on the table, and I just would like to thank you for having the opportunity.
Thank you very much. I would like to make just a couple of points of response, and usually we don't respond. We'll be getting a presentation tonight about what the transitional plan is and what a more permanent plan, how we will arrive at a more permanent plan. We haven't had a lot of discussion about this. What this is about is reconciling language that exists in a handbook that we need to improve with what the existing reality is. And we will, Nick, is there something that you wanted to add to this as a policy chair?
No, I think the only other piece that I would add to it is, yes, we're trying to make our language consistent with the practice. If we don't have class rankings, we can't use class rankings as the sole method of determining Val and Sal. We are not in any way eliminating Val and Sal, at least at this point. We have directed or not directed because it's not within the realms of the policy committee, but the policy committee made it known to the high school administration that we expected that there would still be some way of recognizing academic excellence. And as a school committee, and we'll probably hear that today, is what our expectations are.
Thank you for that clarification. I think it will be a lot of people's
I think there'll be more information at the conclusion of the meeting than currently is out there now. So thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Brendan Keeley. I live 8 Payson Street. I'm also speaking about the valedictorian and salutatorian debate. I think that maybe just because of the significance of the decision, I think maybe like a bit more, because there's been, since Mr. Wolf has entered the school, I think there's been a lot of clarity between the student body and the administration at Newburyport High School, and I think maybe just like a discussion for the students regarding the decision about valedictorian and salutatorian would be really helpful, just so they can put their input in.
Sure. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, my name's Quinn Campbell. I live at 9 Upland Road. I was a 2017 graduate of Newburyport High School, and I just completed my 2nd year of college. And I'm also speaking about the class rank. Some of you might have remembered I came my senior year to speak out against this, and when I saw things happening online today, I was like, maybe this isn't my fight anymore, but then I realized I'm still part of this community and I wanted to share my opinions. The class rank has been eliminated. That has, this seems like the natural next point to eliminate Val and Sal. There are plenty other ways to recognize other academic excellence. And I think it's important to look at why we eliminated class rank, to remind us of the reasons, because this is like the natural progression. I think our educational system should focus on collaboration over competition. I don't think we want our next generations of doctors, lawyers, educators vying over each other rather than learning to work together. So often the closeness of the GPAs or decimal points, you know, it's one grade in a class is really determining this arbitrary difference between you and your peer. And many top districts in colleges across the country have eliminated it. Hamilton Wenham is one of the top districts in Massachusetts, and they have eliminated it. So and then the other instance is speaking at graduation. Their valedictorians and salutatorians have given amazing speeches at graduations, but there's also like 200 other kids who could be giving amazing speeches, and it could be a different way. And I guess just in conclusion, after going 2 years of college, I truly feel like the Newburyport Public Schools prepared me for that. And they were rigorous, my classes were rigorous and demanding. My high school experience was that. And it wasn't because I was fighting with my neighbors, because of the teachers and my peers and the other educators in the school. So I think we need to just continue to innovate and not stick so much to tradition and eliminate valedictorian and salutatorian. Thank you.
Corinne. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kelly Gray at 230 High Street, and I am here to speak on behalf of the valedictorian salutatorian decision. I'm also on the school council for the high school, so I was involved in what the school council has already brought here. The point that I wanted to make as a community member, I first want to applaud the school committee for having 2 years ago eliminated class rank. And the value of having done that to promote collaboration, to promote exploration, so we can really prepare our students for the broadest possible, strongest education they can get here in Newburyport. And we should be proud of what we are offering our students. It also allowed the situation to not choose classes solely based upon how they're weighted and how that would affect your GPA. Because the difference between some of these, if we want to call them top students, those top couple students, are hundredths and sometimes thousandths of a point. So should we keep a valedictorian, salutatorian, which by definition should not exist if we don't have class rank? We can't rank who the first and the second student are. People would make different choices, and already we've had 2 years of students selecting classes based upon the fact that we don't have class rank and making decisions that would be contrary to then suddenly ranking just the very top of the class. And now we're going into the next year's graduating class, which will now have had their third year of classes without a class rank situation. So I would support what the school council was saying, in that we really shouldn't have a salutatorian and a valedictorian. However, I will add to this something, my own opinion, and I do agree with some of what I've heard, because people are like, well, we need to support the people who are the highest academic achievers. And I couldn't agree with you more. I think we could do a better job of honoring those strongest students, because right now the way our honor roll system works doesn't really differentiate our highest academic achievers. So I think there's an opportunity here too. But in the immediate term, we really need to get our school rules in line with the policy that's currently on the book, which is we have no class rank. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Hi there, Julie Gagnon, 5 Tracy Street. I'm here to support the ValSal, continue that long tradition. I think the students work hard and they should get the recognition they deserve. I also think, going back a couple years, the time warp, as an experienced market researcher, just reading the minutes from the past meeting where they got rid of the class rank, that the fact that there was an 87% response rate or something like that just makes me ring bells in my head saying something's wrong with that survey. So I know that wasn't the only part of it, but it does bring me that I think the community should be involved in such a large decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Paul Corviva, 62 Bromfield Street. First of all, thank you, school committee members, administrators. We really appreciate everything you've done. We have a tremendous school system, and your effort and time is very much appreciated, so thank you. And also, I want to thank all the speakers that came out. And folks, I think maybe on the other side of this issue, that I really respect your opinions, and I'm so glad we can have a nice debate about the issues and think about what's the best thing for our children long term. A point of clarification, and when the school rank was voted on 2 years ago, personally, I did not read it as they were eliminating the val and sal. And also, as a point of clarification, in the handbook that every student signs for the last 4 years, it says there is a val and sal, and it's based on the highest GPA and the second highest GPA. So that point is clear. But anyways, I believe in celebrating excellence, and I think we should reward those that achieve excellence. And more importantly, I believe in preparing our children for a future, and that future includes collaboration and competition, and they're not mutually exclusive. You know, we play sports, we get along with the people we compete with. We can collaborate with them, but still have a healthy competition. I fully support a val and sal, valedictorian, salutatorian, and it's a great tradition in Newburyport, and if we're going to change something that's been as long-lasting tradition as that, I think we really should think hard and have a good, healthy debate about it before we rush too much. Scholarships, committees from around the country, not just in Newburyport, schools, Ivy Leagues, top schools, the title matters. When they see valedictorian, salutatorian, that makes a difference. That could be the difference between one of our children getting into a school they want and not. And I think it's a tool that we can give some of our lucky kids that achieve that a chance to get into a better institution or pursue the dream that they want to pursue. Now, let's just say we stay with the valedictorian and salutatorian, but we're changing the rules, okay? Instead of doing GPA, what do? My concern is that, you know, GPA is very clear. The rules, everyone knows the rules going in, everyone knows the selection of classes does impact that, but at least the rules are fair, and there's no bias in that. It's a clear criteria. What's the other criteria? Is it going to start bringing in some biases, some politics, some other things that you don't have as much objective criteria to go against? So before we vote on this, I think we need to really lay out what is the objective criteria. If we are to move, which I think I like the way it is, but if there's a way we're going to move to it, let's make sure the rules are really clear so we all know what we're voting on, and we looked at the pros and cons of those criteria. With that, thank you. Appreciate your time.
Hi, Mary Beth Orlando, 4 William Hall Drive. This is kind of a blast from the past because my youngest is now a junior in college, but pretty much I totally agree with almost everything that Paul has said. I do want to just emphasize that my oldest, who graduated in 2011, just graduated from BU Dental on Friday, and just so you know, they do, in fact, still have valedictorians, even at that level. I agree with a lot of what you said, Quinn, as well. The competition is there no matter what. But to be very honest, I agree with Mr. Acquaviva that in order to get to those top competitive schools, and let's face it, the kids at that point, you're absolutely right. The GPA might be tenths of, but they've worked very hard, and it should be acknowledged. And the honors night is not enough to acknowledge that. Is it just a matter of them not being able to speak because the kids don't want just those two? Again, I know there's 200 other students, but they are allowed, they're voted on, they're able to be speak at Ivy Day. They're allowed, they always have the third speaker after the valedictorian and salutatorian is a class-voted student. They have senior week where they have plenty of opportunity to speak. So again, I agree with Paul that there really needs to be a lot more clarification because you got rid of the ranks, but you didn't get rid of GPAs. And that's a very big difference because a GPA is a GPA. It's a hard number. And I mean, the kids that are going to want those 4.0s and weighted, and again, a lot of schools aren't taking any more SAT scores. GPAs are tough because every school system is different. But having said that, it still is a number, and for a lot of those top competitive schools, it is in fact a very important number. And the top two, again, comes down to the number.
1 and 2 should be recognized at a higher level as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
Thank you. It's good to see you.
Oh, I have to sign it? Yes. Usually Ralph does this.
I just can't hear.
Hi, my name is Christine Doherty, 13 Purchase Street, Newburyport. I have a current senior and I have an 8th grader, and I'm here to speak in support of the school committee making what I would consider corrections to the handbook. So I was surprised at some of the kerfuffle I saw on Facebook and the momentum about the meeting and the point of discussion tonight being a question of valedictorian, salutatorian, and class rank. The 2017 vote, my perception was different than some of the other folks here. I perceived that since we were not ranking students, that we would not rank them for valedictorian or salutatorian. At the time of the discussion, the 2017 discussion, I paid close attention. I don't remember there being a discussion in this body about retaining salutatorian and valedictorian. So when that vote happened, I felt that we were no longer ranking, and therefore we would no longer have a salutatorian and a valedictorian. I feel the 2017, I feel keeping the valedictorian and the salutatorian sort of flies in the face of the spirit of the 2017 vote, and also the letter of the vote, which was to eliminate class rank. So I think that there is certainly a lot of confusion in the community, and there was confusion immediately following the vote. And I think a lot of folks, expected policy statements or whatnot. I think that before you today, I would recommend that you consider it a correction to the handbook, but obviously there's been, sort of policy discussions that have continued. I think that the students in the past several semesters have had a disservice with some uncertainty about choosing classes. And I feel as though in the spirit of the 2017 vote, we can proceed with celebrating academic achievement in a variety of ways, but keep the spirit of the 2017 vote to eliminate class rank. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Hunter Bushnell. I'm a graduating senior right now at the high school. I just wanted to share that I believe that in-school students are always trying to work their hardest and get the best grades. And there's some students who obviously may try harder than others so they can have this award of valedictorian or salutatorian. I believe that it's fair to award them with this because they did show the work. And I believe that sometimes if we got rid of the valedictorian, salutatorian, and we voted for someone, it could be someone not less deserving, but the people who tried the hardest for the position, the title of that they deserve to get that title. And I believe that valedictorian and salutatorian are very justifiable for people who have put the work in instead of people who maybe did less but tried in other places. But I feel like keeping with the tradition of valedictorian and salutatorian, it's a good thing to have at the high school. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. James Meinhardt, 27.5 Jefferson Street, Newburyport. I would like to reiterate, I believe the concept of recognizing the most outstanding academic achievers should continue in some way. I would personally think it is good to have a valedictorian and salutatorian based on a purely objective measurement of GPA. There's certainly room for other recognitions and other methods of recognizing those. But I think it's critical to the success of those students in the future. And it's also part, I believe, of your own mission statement right here. You say clearly, black and white, personal excellence and is equipped for life experiences. Well, life experience in today's society is you are ranked in your jobs, in your career, in your compensation. You're always ranked. And this concept, I think, is very important to a full, well-rounded individual graduating from our high school. Thank you.
I'm on the watch. Ralph
So is everybody
Orlando,
else,
4
probably.
William Hall Drive. Some of you don't know me, but those who do know, I have had a great commitment to public education in the city of Newburyport. One of the reasons why I no longer attend happens to be that they've changed the format somewhat. So public comment 6:30, and there's no dialogue. They used to have a public comment at the end of school committee so that you could at least comment on what was presented. And I would encourage all of you to take a look at that again, as well as I'd like to give you my perspective on what has happened, some of which I've had absolutely no knowledge of until recently. Not a big proponent of weighted GPAs. You're right, you can game the system, right? The kid who's not in an honors class who gets an A is equally deserving to be considered for a valedictorian as the student who's taking 5 AP classes. You need to take a look at that. Not all schools do it. We don't do it, or they don't do it at the next level. When you go to college, they don't have, oh, you're in an honors class and you get more weighted GPA. You should not allow this to become a personality contest. We all know that people can schmooze people. At my level, when I went to medical school, was pass-fail. The kids who got the distinction were the ones who could schmooze the residents and the attendings on rounds, and there was no objective criteria to give you a grade. It's what you demonstrated that you knew. I'm not a proponent of eliminating class rank. What I saw happening in the years that I came here is class rank became what it shouldn't have become. Another parameter that the student strove for each and every time they saw class ranks published. Class ranks should only be published at the very last time that they need to be published so that they can be presented to schools as the class rank that you came from on your college application. So I'm a very strong proponent of keeping the valedictorian and salutatorian. I'm also a very good proponent of having people take a look at what students do in addition to those graded things. But you really, if you're going to take a look at the valedictorian, salutatorian, you need to take a couple of steps back and look at class rank, how you do it, and weighted GPAs, because I don't believe that's the way to rank our children today. And I thank you for your time. I'm 30 seconds over.
That's okay. That's okay. Thank you, Dr. Orlando. I can't speak on behalf of the school committee, but I'm happy to see you back.
Well, I'm not back, but, you know, it's hard getting here at 6:30 coming out of Boston, but when I retire, I'll be back.
Good.
And the surroundings are a lot better.
Good, yeah, it is. Thank you very much. Is there anybody else who has anything they'd like to share with us? Can we have your name and address, please?
Judith Kennedy, Kent Street, Newburyport. I think I speak as the oldest graduate here. I graduated in 1960. I started work as the principal secretary in 61. I've worked for, I tried to write down the names of the principals, 10 principals. Each time a new principal came on board, one of our traditions would go down the tubes. And it just makes me very sad. When I was class advisor for Sean's class, I tried to instill in my kids the love of Newburyport High School, because I unabashedly loved Newburyport High School. I loved the traditions that we had there. It made me very sad to see people argue against, especially one principal that came in from Boston that called us all townies, and what the heck do you have all these stupid traditions for, you know? I mean, you're just a backwoods high school anyway. I mean, that was 5 years of horror living under that man. But I really think we should try to keep honoring our top 2 students. They have worked hard. I don't think I've ever seen anyone thousandths of a point away get the Val and Val, and I've worked with determining the Val and Sal all the years I worked there. Those kids deserve to be honored. They deserve to speak at graduation. I really urge you to try to keep this tradition at Newburyport High School.
Thank you very much. 10 principals, that's almost as many superintendents as I've worked with in the time I've been here.
Thanks.
Terrific, thank you very much, Mrs. Kennedy. All right. We have our student rep now. Is that what we're gonna do?
Sure.
Great.
All right, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about what the high school has been up to in this past month. So first and foremost, 2 weeks ago, the student council had its 4th meeting of the school year. We were very lucky. We had a lot of guests attend this meeting. As Mrs. Riccio, the director of nursing, participated to collaborate with the council around district efforts to manage student vaping. Also in attendance were Mayor Holliday and State Representative Jim Kelcourse. They solicited student input around a proposed bill that would lower the voting age for local elections. As with prior meetings, the student voice was quite diverse, and the conversations that ensued, especially around the proposed bill, were very intriguing. This past Friday, the seniors, the class of 2019, they've graduated. They're their last day. This week is we call Senior Week, and they are finishing finals and have their prom scheduled for Thursday night. Additionally, the Scholarship Awards night is this Wednesday, and that's always a great opportunity to really acknowledge some students who have achieved above and beyond what is expected, and we get to award them with scholarships, which is awesome. The Vespers night is set for Tuesday, May 28th, and Ivy Day, which is the traditional changing of student leadership from the senior class to the junior class, will take place on Wednesday, May 28th. Also, graduation is set for Sunday, June 2nd at 11, which is always a fun event, and I encourage everyone here to attend. So tomorrow is the first day of Math MCAS, and I believe it's sophomores will be partaking in that, and that's always a really good day for them because they get to really test their knowledge and see how much they've learned in comparison to all the other schools around the state. The junior class will be participating in the Credit for Life Fair, which is held at Masco tomorrow. This event is sponsored by the Institution for Savings, and they are providing free lunch and bus service for all the 11th graders, which is really cool. If you're not familiar with the Credit for Life Fair, this event provides a simulation of the financial obstacles students will face throughout their lives. Students learn how to manage a budget, use credit cards wisely, and determine means to save money. During this fair, each student is provided with an occupational scenario. In other words, they get to choose a job that they would like to do in the future, and they are, in the scenario is they're 25 and they're working at this job that they chose, and the Institution for Savings goes ahead and finds out their salaries, and they compile all this data together about their job. And on top of that, the students will complete a spending plan, and they're going to do this by visiting a ton of booths in which they interact with members of the business, nonprofit, and public sectors to learn about the cost of living and the financial decisions they will make when they are adults. In addition, each student will be receiving personalized credit counseling so they can have help and pretty much professional help in managing their monetary decisions. And the ultimate goal for this event is to have each student to be able to maintain a balanced budget so when they go out into the real world, they are successful. And this is an excellent opportunity, and as a junior, I will be partaking in this tomorrow. I just wanted to express my sincere gratitude for both the high school and the Institution for Savings for sponsoring this event. Thank you.
Terrific. It's real life learning.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Do you want to chime in at all on the valedictorian and salutatorian?
So what spoke to me was what Brendan was saying. I believe he's the second one that spoke, and I am a member of student council, and I believe we'll be having a meeting in beginning of June probably, and I think it would be a great opportunity to discuss that and we could get a say what the school as a student body would like to see done, and so I think I'm going to be putting that forward.
That'd be great.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. We're technologizing again. We're hoping to have a presentation briefly. We're going to do some recognitions, but we're also going to have the IMWE project present to us about arts in the schools. turn it over to Sean.
Sure. All right, sorry for the technical difficulty there. So as part of our school committee tonight, it's not a student recognition, it's a student presentation. And just want to touch base on teacher Jen Groskin, as you recall throughout this year, really has worked on the I Am We project about citizenship and having students take an active role within our school community at the middle school. She also presented for neighboring districts, for teachers, to kind of best practices around these student citizenship and taking an active role. So the girls that we're going to introduce, and hopefully by the time I finish my introduction, this PowerPoint will be ready to go, because they put a lot of time and effort in. Maddie Marshall, Sophia Hartford, Rachel Conover, and Claudia Cummins, in the beginning in October, came to me with their proposal regarding arts funding and participation in the Newburyport Public Schools from pre-K all the way to 12. So they did a lot of research. They had many interviews with our own faculty. They reached out to many people within our community and really have an in-depth presentation on some of the strengths of our program, areas of growth, how to improve, and then really kind of like a proposal at the end of their presentation. What was really nice to see is part of my entry plan in Newburyport was really from a lot of the different stakeholders was the strength of our arts program, and really taking a look at that and increasing opportunities throughout our school district. And this group of students really did a lot of that work too. So it was almost side by side. As I was doing my entry plan, they were also doing their presentation. So at this time, I'd like to have Jen Groskin, if you don't mind, come on up, along with Maddie Marshall, Sophia Hartford, Rachel Conover, and Claudia Cummings.
They're gonna go on up.
All right, they're off. All right. They also have this presentation on their cell phone, so they'll be able to read off their slides. All right. All right, yeah. Try. Oh.
This way. They plug it into their phone.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, I'm Maddie Marshall. I'm Sophia Hartford. I'm Rachel Conover. And I'm Claudia Cummings. And we are here to give you a presentation about arts funding and participation in Newburyport schools. For our RMW project this year, which is a civic action project that we have to do, we decided to do arts funding and participation in Newburyport schools because we feel that's an important issue that needs to be addressed because we're all people who participate in the arts and it pertains to us. So we felt the need to speak out about it and inform people about why they're important and the impact that they can make on students and just people in general.
Okay, so these are just some of the key points that we're going over in our presentation. So we're going to look at the research on like the benefits of the arts and how they benefit students and classes. We're going to look at the strengths of the programs, areas of growth, how we can improve them, and then our ultimate goals, so what we want out of the whole project. Okay, so just okay, so this is just one of the key terms that we're going to use throughout the presentation. And it can mean many different things, but we're using it, it's just all forms of creative expression. So it's theater, drawing, painting, music, orchestra, band, chorus, all the different arts that you have in the schools. These are just a few of them, there are a lot more.
Okay, next slide.
Okay, so the first...
You can click it again. So one of the main categories is music, which includes orchestra, which is strings, band, which is kind of like a combination. It has like brass and wind and stuff like that. Chorus, which is just singing, and music class, which is kind of all that stuff combined, and a few other things mixed in there. Next.
Visual arts includes drawing, ceramics, painting, and like art classes provided for all grades.
Next.
Performing arts, which is musical theater, which is the musical, dramatic theater, which is the play, dance and improv.
And then arts technology, which includes like music technology, where students use technology to create like different programs, and then videography and photography, and then any computer animation.
So for this project, we interviewed arts teachers from all schools, so the Bresnahan, the Knox Middle School, the Mullen, and the high school. And we asked them, what do you think could be improved? What do you like about it? And they gave us a lot.
Most of the information for our presentation is from the arts teachers.
Okay. Next, we have some research on the benefits of arts.
Okay, so go ahead. Click.
Students who participate in the arts are 4 times more likely to participate in math or science activities.
Next.
They're 3 times more likely to have a better attendance.
Next.
And they're 4 times more likely to do well in academics. They also have a 4% dropout rate on average, which is 5 times lower than those who don't participate in the arts.
Some other statistics we have is that 50% of high participation art students get a gainful employment later in life. And 93% of Americans believe that arts are vital to a well-rounded education.
And then that's our source.
So the next we're going to talk about the strengths of our art programs.
So we're breaking it down by school and then by program. Oh, next one.
So the music program at the Bresnahan School, we talked to Mr. RM. We went and interviewed all the teachers, and he said that they have very supportive staff, like all around the staff, school committee, like everyone he feels is very supportive of the programs. And the NEF also supports them extremely, which he said was really big. They give them, if they need a little bit of money, they can do that. And then they also apply for grants from outside. And also, younger kids have very open schedules, and they're very committed to the programs that they sign up for because they don't have as much money.
Visual arts in the Bresnahan, they have a very nice workspace, and all the students participate, and younger students are very creative in the classes.
Next. And then Mullen. Okay, so for the strengths of the Mullen, for music, so band and orchestra classes are offered to 5th graders and are introduced in the 4th grade, where you can learn more about it. Weekly music classes, those are basically like the general all-around music classes, and where students are able to like learn about different forms of musical expression. And so if you sometimes forget your instrument, if you have a band or orchestra class, there are times where they can provide you one so that you don't have to go that class without using it, but sometimes that doesn't happen, so sometimes kids don't have an instrument.
So for the visual arts in the Mullen School, so there's very good basic funding compared to the other schools. This is what one of the art teachers we interviewed there has to say. And she also says that like, the class seems to help the students' academic classes. And also this is like with art classes can help students really learn to appreciate art.
And then the performing arts, it's a newer program at the Mullen School. And as of right now, they have a large amount of kids that can participate. It offers early exposure to theater before they go to the middle school shows, which tend to be more intense, and then the high school shows, which are more intense than that. And it's a developing program. Like I said, it's brand new, it's still growing, and so there's still a lot that they can do with the program.
So next, the non-middle school.
So the strengths in terms of the music program is that there's similar to the Mullen, but unlike the Mullen, there's actually orchestra and band classes that are offered for sixth through eighth grade. They help accommodating like aspiring musicians. They have many different arts that the classes focus on.
Visual arts is also very similar. They have very good basic funding. The class helps students' academic classes, and they also learn to appreciate art at this stage. And it also gives students skills that they can use later in life.
Performing arts, there's a musical available to all grades for both acting and backstage, and then also tech work. Students get to learn to take a little bit of information from the director and do what they want with it, which is very different from what you get in a typical classroom where they give you information and you're expected to learn it. And so you get to do what you want with the information. And then there's also a play, which is new this year, and it was available to be directed, produced, and run by students with student actors.
We also have the arts technology at the NOC, and in that class, students can learn how to use technology to create music. Next, the Newburyport High School.
There's a band elective that's open for all grades who would like to participate. There's going to be an orchestra elective available for next year. For this year, it's a flex class after school. The orchestra is a new and developing program at the school, starting with the freshmen this year. And there's also choir available.
Visual art classes are available to all the grades, and taking art helps work with the student's brain, helps them with their mental and emotional health. They also get to create art that's unique later on.
So for the strengths in performing arts, they provide a place where students can be themselves and creatively and freely express themselves. And it like similar to other performing arts programs, it allows for students to find a new way to express themselves and learn and adapt to an environment.
And then for the arts technology in the high school, the kids can participate in the arts in like a unique and different type of way by using the technology. And then it's also a modern way of learning arts through the technology.
So now we're going to look at some areas of growth for the different programs. We're going to go school by school. So the Bresnahan School, the teachers had said they wanted more time between classes. This is more of a scheduling thing, but they teach classes pre-K to 3rd grade, which is a lot of grades to be at the school, and they typically have classes back to back every day. So more teachers or like that could be beneficial for this. Budget for materials has been declining over the years. We looked at the approved budget, and we could see,
2019.
Yeah. There's only one art teacher for both the classes, like I said, and they had a part-time art teacher. She no longer works there, but it's a lot for the 2 teachers, one art and one music, to take on by themselves. And also more performance-based opportunities for younger students, like they used to have Mighty Minds, Spotlight in the 2nd grade, and that's what they did at the Bresnahan School. And also making music part of the school culture, which would boost participation in the classes once they get to the Mullen and then the NUM.
So for some of the areas of improvement, when you're in 5th grade, you only have the band or orchestra class once a week, which is not really easy, especially if you're younger, because you're doing it once a week and it's not really going to reinforce like the new thing that you're learning, especially if you're younger and you're starting a new instrument. Several times a week would be better because it would reinforce what you're learning, so that would be helpful. And more instruments made available as well, because if you are not able to afford instruments or instrument maintenance, it may turn you off from wanting to do that. Even if you really wanted to do it, it would turn you off and not make you want to participate in that.
For the NOC middle school, so there are some instruments provided for students in band and orchestra, but there would be a need for more, so more kids can sign up and more kids can have the opportunity to participate if they don't have like their own instruments. And then also helping the kids with instrument maintenance, because that's a difficult thing for kids to do on their own. Another thing is adding like more classes, so just more opportunities for students. And then again, more time with students overall in classes to like work more and just have students like remember and learn. And then just again, the more participation.
For the Newburyport High School, more participation so more students to sign up for the programs and to stick with them through high school. Also more opportunities to provide harder classes for the advanced students, and allowing the arts to fit in with the schedule so students don't feel like they have to choose one thing over another.
Okay, so, yeah. Just one thing that we're going to try to do we're going to attempt to survey 6th graders and 9th graders to determine why kids might be dropping out of the classes once they get to the new school. 5th graders dropping out as they go into 6th grade, 8th graders dropping out as they go into high school. Because that's something that you might like have an idea of what you think middle school or high school will be like, and that will encourage you not to sign up because you think you might be too busy.
Okay, how can improve the programs? And then, yeah, it's broken down by category.
Yeah. So we would go back to the 4 categories.
So for more participation, that's like a big overarching theme, but definitely more participation in music, and more funding for instrument maintenance and just instruments in general.
Also, for visual art, more funding, more materials, and also another big one is more time given for the students.
More participation is really one for all of them. Always more participation, which is part of our project, how we can boost participation in the classes. And then you also need people to stick with the programs as they go from school to school or grade to grade. And then also making sure that the programs continue to draw kids in. There continues to be a musical that kids will be interested in, or there continues to be plays and stuff that people want to do, want to audition for.
And for the arts technology, there's always like improvement in technology. It's always changing, so just updates in technology would help the students like be more updated and helpful in their classes.
And then
This is our
ultimate goal.
Overall, we want more participation from students in all grades. We want students to enjoy what they're doing and dive deeper into topics they really care about. We want students to try new things and programs within the schools, and also more programs to be available for those students. We want existing programs to be able to grow and thrive and become bigger than they are, become bigger and better and more what students want them to be, and then all existing programs to have what they need to maintain that strong program.
So how we plan to get there? We want to figure out how to help and address why students may be stop doing arts programs, such as why we're going to be doing the survey for the 6th and 9th graders just to see what's forcing them to drop out, or whether it's scheduling or not wanting to do it, or just like losing hope and faith in it, or interest either. Help to encourage younger students to sign up and stick with the arts. Definitely that's a big one too, because if you're younger, you might not know what's like middle school or high school is like, so you might need someone who's older to help guide you and educate you as to what it's actually like, because sometimes rumors spread and make kids scared to like try new things because they heard bad things about it. And have a little bit more money for the programs so that they can grow and thrive with both participation and funding, so that they're as good as they can be, as great as they can.
Okay, so does anyone have any questions regarding the presentation?
Yes.
You mentioned you were looking at the recent budget, and I guess what I want to hear from you as a school committee member and as someone who's, grew up in this community and had his kids go through the schools, and one of my daughters actually graduated with a degree in fine arts. What's needed? I mean, what was your impression of the budget that you saw?
Well, when we first looked at the budget, it was kind of a little bit confusing because it was so many numbers. But then once we were able to break it down and digest it and just like look at the overall trends throughout the schools, we do actually have a lot of money for particular areas. But I feel like that some of us feel like that money needs to be spread more evenly across all the arts programs, because like Rachel, you can talk more about the visual arts at the Bresnahan.
She felt like she needed a bit more materials for each student. She felt like she had a little bit of money for each student, but that it may be improved if she had more.
Yeah, like she was talking like about the part-time teacher she was given, but that teacher no longer works there, so she just was like needing more help with all the students, and then also like more materials for the students, because she only had like, when she looked at her budget, there's only like 3 cents per student to work for materials, so like a lot of it she couldn't pay for it because she didn't have that much money.
I think like one of the common, like, almost like, not necessarily misconceptions, but something that a lot of people, like, it's hard to realize, like, unless you're like highly participating in it, that like a lot of the arts, like, it does cost a lot of money, it takes a lot of money, like with instrument maintenance, and like we talked about with that, it's like renting an instrument can cost a lot of money, which is why a lot of students might not do it, like they might not have that available to them. And then also maintaining your instrument, making sure that it's repaired. If it gets broken, you want to keep playing, that can also cost a lot of money. So I think the school being able to provide that would be something that would be really helpful. And then also like art supplies cost a lot of money as well, especially if you want to get better art supplies. Like,
there's some really expensive arts things out
So
there.
like,
And also just the thing in general, we need new risers at the middle school. I talked to
it's just like there's all safety.
it's honestly a safety issue. Like when I was doing the musicals, or when I was a few times when I was in the auditorium, I had to try to deconstruct them, and it was extremely unsafe. And it was like, just they're just really old, and it's honestly a safety hazard. Sometimes some kids trip over them, some kids just, it's just not safe.
Safety's really important, so thanks for bringing it up.
Yeah.
So again, I need to, I'm just trying to, so did you find it frustrating at all to take a look at this and find out how little, you said 3 cents a student?
That was an estimate, but yeah, it was
Yeah,
like.
that doesn't even get you much paper, you know? Yeah.
It is very frustrating because we all care so passionately about the arts, and we participate in them, and they're just in our daily lives. So it's sad to see funding go more towards something that
And
doesn't need as much as it gets.
And music is a great thing to learn as a discipline. Art and the visual skill sets that are involved in that, you see them every day, and things you do wasn't that way 30 years ago when I was going through school. So I just want to commend you all for stepping up and speaking as you did. It was very, very helpful to me, at least as a school committee member. Thank you.
Any more questions? Yes.
I just would like to thank you. You did mention just in your last comment that the arts are very important to all of you. Can you tell me which discipline or multiple disciplines that you're interested in? Because I assume that's what drew you to doing this research.
Like, do you want a
Like,
program?
do you play the flute? Do you?
I play the trumpet in the band. I do the music. I participate in theater, and I do the musicals and I do the plays.
Okay.
That's what I do for art.
I play cello in the orchestra. I did the musical and the play all 3 years in middle school, and I'm also in the chorus.
I play piano in the orchestra, and I've also done the musicals, and I also sing in the chorus as well.
I play violin in the orchestra, and I also do the musicals and sing in the chorus.
Wonderful, thank you. So do you have a list of instruments that, I mean, I know both my sons are professional musicians today and went through the school system. But are there instruments that are really needed in the school that potentially a website could be put up and ask for people, like they open their closets or go up to their attics, and how many times students have old instruments sitting around that they don't use anymore that we could donate?
I feel like it's kind of just in general, just like band instruments, orchestra instruments, just, I feel like it's in drill. I could definitely, if you need it, I could find like a list of instruments that like the music teachers feel that we need the most, but I feel like as of right now, for our knowledge, it's just in general.
It's just like, if we could get them donated, that would be really, really big for the schools, because that would also save a lot of money. Like we said, they are very expensive.
Yeah.
And, but like all instruments, because you never know, like an upcoming 5th grader that might want to play an instrument, but it might not be able to afford an instrument. Having that option to play whatever they wanted to would be probably really, really big for them, and really, really big in participation boost.
Thank you. Nice work. Nice work.
Yeah, I also wanted to thank you for the work that you've done, and ask you if you would be willing to allow us to post this on the school website, and then when you get your survey results, update what you posted, because I think it's important for the community. I also and really, really pleased that you have identified making sure the arts are accessible regardless of your ability to pay for it as an issue that the district should really struggle with and solve. So I really appreciate that. You guys have done a terrific job. Thank you. Are there other questions or comments from anybody? Dave?
I guess my question is more to Sean. The year after year renting instruments from the companies we do now, just to not have anything to show after it, like after how many years, it's got to be a better model,
Right.
as a district. Like, so I'm wondering if have you ever been in a district that uses models other than parents showing out and then ending up with nothing at the end?
Right, yeah, I think that, and this is why these 8th graders, when they brought this project to me, and as we met a few different times, I think that's one big area, that they brought up with the rentals and the affordability. So I think it's for us to kind of go back. There are different models out there, but I think it's really working with the music teachers and the principals to see if we can change that, to give an opportunity for more of our students to participate in music. And I love the mayor's idea in the sense of with other musicians out there that may not be utilizing their instruments anymore as they graduated, we might be able to do a campaign to have those instruments donated to the music program. So I think that the girls did a great job in bringing a lot of new ideas and different areas of growth to the table for us.
I got one more. Sean?
Was there anything else that you could think of, let's say there was the next NEF, project we'd like to do, the wellness room is just about done. Is there anything that you guys saw in all the schools that got, if we could just do this would be really something that would,
Risers, especially at the.
besides the safety issue with the risers, yes?
Yes, risers,
The-
lights
yeah,
for
the
the
technology
auditorium.
and all, like
Ooh.
technology at the NOC especially.
Yeah.
We talked to Mr. Nickerson, and he said had the, for example, their music technology lab is very old and almost outdated almost, and he said if he could get a new lab, technology is always changing, it's always improving, there's always updates to technology. So that's a big one, being able to maintain something that could sustain a program that could be relevant as technology.
Is the software you guys use in the music tech lab not compatible with the Chromebooks?
I have no.
None of us
We're one-to-one at the NOC, so
Yes.
I'm just curious as to.
I think with the Chromebooks, those are I guess they're too small. I guess I think
audio tech lab.
I don't.
So there's
We have a
keyboards,
full
MIDI
audio music
keyboards.
lab.
I understand that, but it's software. So is it web-based software or is it?
Both. It's a combination of hardware and software altogether.
And it-
They're not.
Sorry.
They're not.
Okay.
They're not.
We're not really.
Thanks.
Software versus an app on the Chromebooks. The Chromebooks only use an app, so
Yeah.
it's totally not compatible.
Okay, great.
So I have just one quick question. I think you kind of hinted at it, that I'd like to bring up the other resource. You talked about money and how we spend money. One of the things I heard you hint about, but I'm also interested in understanding what your wish list would be, is how you would use that other resource called time. Do you feel that the arts programs in general have enough time? Where would you find the additional time that you think they need? You talked about it at the elementary school, but I've got a feeling it might be true in some of the other classes as well. How do you create a culture such that you can utilize time more creatively and more flexibly to make sure that you have the right amount of time available for the arts?
The time break up differentiates between the schools. I mean, the Bresnahan, it's not that there's not enough time, or there's just not enough time between classes, and the teachers sometimes don't have enough time set up. But with the Mullen, there's not enough time dedicated, and it's kind of just the Mullen through the high school. There's not enough time dedicated to the arts, and sometimes scheduling is an issue as well, especially at the high school when you have sports or honors or just more higher level classes that require more homework and more dedication and more studying. So sometimes arts can conflict with that, and especially sports can conflict with arts, so that can be a little bit harder too.
I think think that also, like we talked about with more teachers, there are 2 art teachers at like both the Knock and the Mullen. That's the best example I can really give. That's where I am right now. There are 2 art teachers and they teach at both schools, and teaching all 5 of the grades can be a lot. Like it's the same at the Bresnahan, and I'm guessing it's the same at the high school too. It's hiring more teachers would allow for, like we have a flex block within the school day at the Knock, and usually that time can be used. You can go down and you can work on art projects, or you can go to the chorus room, but the teachers are teaching younger kids at that point for us. So if you had more teachers, or if you had teachers that were Knock teachers and Mullen teachers, like that would allow for more time like during that block. And then also scheduling at the high school, we looked at, one of the things we want to look at is if someone wants to sign up for, say, a fall sport, like the musical's also in the fall, and it's at the same time, like just scheduling wise, making it so that there is an option for everybody to do what they want to do, or if they can't do the musical in the fall, maybe there's another option. Like that might be a little smaller in the winter. I'm not exactly sure how it works throughout all the schools, but just making more options, more, yeah.
Great. Great job.
Thank you very much. In the interest of allowing people to sort of move along here, I'm wondering if the school committee would be willing to allow us to move the handbook discussion up ahead of the next item, which is the Chartwell's conversation. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Terrific. Great. Why don't we do that? I don't know who is managing this item.
Yes, so we have, I think in the audience, Mr. Wolf and Mr. Testa, regarding the 3 different proposals on some of the student handbook changes. And if school committee members have questions, I'm sure Mr. Wolf and Mr. Testa can answer.
That'd be great. Yeah, you can guys both can be on the same side if you feel you need to.
So, just as a short introduction, the policy committee met a week ago with Mr. Wolf and Mr. Testa. They showed these proposals to us. We gave them some comments. They went back and did some wordsmithing, and that's what they're presenting today. The committee would ask that we approve these changes to the student handbook.
Okay, so again, do you want to just sort of frame what exactly we're being asked to do? Anybody can do that. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to give an overview of the process that we followed with the school council. And then as I go over that and then highlighting the 3 specific areas, Mike, who really kind of engaged in the nitty-gritty, will give more of the specifics with each of the policies.
Terrific.
So kind of the process that we followed in terms of the lens of the review of the handbook, recognizing that that is one of the responsibilities of our school council is to provide feedback, was really to go through it and identify inconsistencies with updated state and/or district policies and accountability measures that currently exist. And the school council definitely did a thorough job. We had a month-long process where we had a Google Doc where everybody was able to go in and kind of identify policies that hit some of those inconsistent areas. And so outside of some minor edits that were found, there were really 3 main areas that we needed to engage in a deeper dialogue around in terms of making our proposal to the subcommittee. And the 3 areas that we really needed to focus on was the attendance policy. So realizing that the state has now new accountability measures in terms of student attendance. So we realized we needed to take a closer look at that to update. And again, Mike is going to kind of go over the specifics of that. And then also the other piece, just around the vaping and how does the school intervene with vaping, especially when students are caught in school, or at least having resources for families when they recognize their children are struggling with that addiction. And again, Mike is gonna go over the specifics of that piece. And then the last part, which obviously we heard tonight during the the public comment part, is the language around the valedictorian and salutatorian in the handbook. It conflicts with the district's policy of class rank. And so our recommendation there was to remove that language from the handbook, but also realizing that we need to engage really in a comprehensive dialogue at the school level. And as we explained to the subcommittee, kind of the thinking around that is really to engage in the same process that we did earlier in this school year around the implementation of our new rules, where we had a school-wide dialogue that lasted about 3 weeks, and anybody could kind of write down their ideas and comment on other people's kind of thoughts. And then we were able to kind of deconstruct all of that information, and we had students with teachers at the table helping us to kind of make our adjustment to the rules, and it really worked quite well, and I feel confident that we can get to the same place with how speakers are selected for graduation as well, just around realizing that it is kind of a big topic, because it's a traditional thing. And so, but, you know, our thinking on it is to really engage in that thoughtful dialogue, because that's really what I value more so than wherever the policy lands, is that we're always modeling for our students how to engage in constructive dialogue that leads us towards a new product, but then that we may consistently revisit. So even with our rules that we adjusted this year, we're gonna be engaging in that same process at the start of next year. What adjustments are we gonna make? Because that's how our world is now. It's all about how are you revisiting and making yourself better, which is really kind of, I'll be honest with you, my main objective as principal of Newburyport High School is that we're constantly trying to figure out how to make Newburyport High School even greater. And here is another opportunity for us to engage in that dialogue with our students and our teachers, respecting the process that had happened 2 years ago, or 2.5 years ago, when some students kind of brought the concern to the school committee, did their research, but that's just recognizing the level of competition that was existing in the school amongst students. And so that's kind of where our thought process is with all of this. But what I'll do is I'll let Mike really get into the specifics of each of the three. I may have just stole your last one, but that's what happens when you have me go first.
No, that's good. So I guess from this point, my recommendation, if we just take them one at a time, again, the brief overview is we're looking to make some changes to our attendance policy, to just beef up a little bit, but do something somewhat similar to what we are currently doing in response to vaping, and then the last one being the discussion about Val and Sal. And so my intent would be to give you a very brief verbal overview of the current policy, and then what the subtle shift would be, and the rationale behind that. So for our attendance policy, there's two things that we're looking to change. The existing policy, in terms of a consequence that's built in, is that if a student exceeds 10, if they go over 10 unexcused absences in any class, so it's on a class-by-class basis, in a semester, they would receive a score of FA, their grade on their transcript and on their report card, which stands for an administrative failure. And that does two things. They don't get credit, but then they also have an F factored into their GPA. And there's an appeal process and a due process hearing that students can participate in that. Our recommendation is going to be to do two things based on some legal input we had as well. First of all, the guidance was you can't give a failure for kids with too many days absent. Absenteeism is really a behavioral issue, and you shouldn't be addressing behaviors with academic consequences. So the shift would be that the student still would not receive credit, but they would not be getting a score of administrative failure. So it would effectively do away with administrative failure. And so the language would say that if you exceed X number of absences, then you would receive no credit. The other thing we want to do, which Andy started to mention, is to reduce that number of allowable days out from 10 down to 9. And that's to be more in alignment with what the state's accountability data is suggesting. So students are chronically absent. if they're 10% or higher. So 10% of our school days would be 18 school days. Cut that in half for a semester would land us more at 9. So a student could still be safely at 10. They could be categorized as chronically absent, which is not data that we want for our school or district, but have no penalty locally at the school level. So by shifting from 10 to 9, we're closer in alignment with that. Also recognizing that we do have excused and unexcused absences. So these are, and those are all defined. Every school has to define a list of what does categorize as an excused absence. Predominantly it's medical notes, but a number of other things as well. And we're not looking to change that. So what we're asking for is approval to reduce the number of allowable days out per course per semester from 10 to 9. And the thing that might be just a little bit, generate a little more discussion is about that shift of going from an administrative failure to receiving no credit. I looked at a lot of handbooks in this area, most of the Cape Ann League schools and some of our local schools and some schools that we compare ourselves to by other measures, and I couldn't find another school that issues an administrative failure like we have been doing for many years. And so, but most schools that I saw just have language that states to earn credit, you must do the following: earn higher than whatever percentage and not exceed a certain number of absences. And so in the document that you have in front of you is the proposed language of what it would say in terms of attendance.
At what point do you intervene with a student who has that you're noticing is on this path to heavy unexcused absences?
That's a great question about intervening. And so this year has been a real big focus at the high school, working largely with the student support department, so our guidance counselors, adjustment counselors. And so their professional goal this year as a department was to build in interventions and to get to kids sooner. So that direct answer is at 3 and at 5. So at the third absence in the year, someone's reaching out, a phone call to the parents, and just to say, but the thing is, if that's in the first 2 weeks of school, it's very problematic. If it's 5 months down the line, it doesn't really have the same symptoms behind it. So at the third absence, so someone's making a phone call, and at the 5th absence, there's a meeting where we try to bring in a support team and make a plan to approve attendance. And we also have automated mailings that go out upon the 5th.
Is that per, I know you're saying it's on a whole day out, but if someone skips math?
Yeah, actually, by
days.
definition, it's like the equivalent of 2 full periods out. So it's funky where we do have some subtle shifts in our policy about on a class-by-class basis, yet our daily attendance is being driven by if you're out for the day. For instance, you might not miss math class because it didn't meet that day if you were absent. In some cases, that gives you a little buffer or grace period.
Sean, so the state threshold of chronically absent, does the state care if it's excused or unexcused?
Right now, they don't.
No, which is tough.
You can write an appeal.
Right. So you could have 10 kids with mono,
Yes.
or whatever, but that still is a knock on us as far
Correct.
as the state is concerned.
Right.
There's an appeal process for the state, which you can submit excused absences for a certain number of students, but right now, because chronic absenteeism is a new accountability measure, they're not as lenient on looking at what's excused and what isn't. They're just taking all absences together at this point.
And I guess I can see that, but we talked about this when we talked about scheduling or whatever. We're trying to, and this is great. I was in that policy meeting. It's all good stuff. But at the same time, we're also trying to make sure the state is happy.
I agree.
Right.
But it doesn't really matter what we do.
And I think that
in terms of this,
with Commissioner Riley, I think a lot of the superintendents, and Angela was part of that accountability meeting, really went, voiced their concerns on this, because we're focused on social emotional learning. We're focused on the ability to develop, flexible schedules to meet the students' needs, especially those students with, suffering from, mental illness or anxiety or depression. In this accountability that the state is providing us doesn't fit of the vision of what we're trying to do. And so the commissioner basically, understood that, and as, I think chronic absenteeism, the more we have this as accountability, was kind of encouraging, he gets it, like we're lumping everyone together right now, but I think he foresees down the road of, having those excused absences. But I think for the state, when they're looking at, and I think we've talked about this throughout the school year, it's one measure that impacts all schools. So it's a complex issue, but it's an easy data point for the entire state, because you can look at, you have so many students that are absent, regardless if it's excused or not excused, you have a cohort, and then they can compare one district to the other, so.
Do we internally, we went over which days are gonna be early release days, do we check out which ones are excused and unexcused, or we just say 27?
No, I think, no, for us,
because I think that matters in
it
that
does.
Conversation that
100%.
the sick kids and the
100%.
that flu year or whatever.
Right, and I think with exactly what the mayor, alluded to is, yes, when we have students that have 3 absences, 5 absences, we're bringing those students and the families in, making contact. So for us, we have excused absence that we have for students, receiving credit, partial schedule, whatever we need to do to work with our students and families, we're gonna do at the district level. But that attendance reporting at the end of the year, we have to report all of those absences. So through the state, they're looking at chronic absenteeism, but for us, we're on a case-to-case basis, and we're following our mission with social emotional learning and helping our students. We're providing a lot of resources. So I think by the time a student gets to 9 or over 9 or 10, there's going to be a lot of interventions at the school level working with those families.
Angela, go ahead.
I just wanted to add to that, that even the state now, as they're, wrestling a little bit with how to make this more equitable, they have put in a clause already that says if a district can prove that a student is receiving what would be equivalent to a half a day's education, they will accept that as an, not as as a day of absenteeism. And that is built in just for students who may be struggling, and we need to do alternative education options for those students. So, it's a step in the right direction. So they're already starting to see that there has to be some flexibility.
Yeah, I guess just a couple of points. Number one, I want to thank you for the format that you sent us, the what's here now, what our proposal is, really easy to follow, so appreciate that. I also think it's a good move forward because it connects with the standards-based learning work that's coming into the district, because attendance does not equal not learning. Like if a kid's not there, it's not learning. I do think, and we talked about this along with the calendar, I do think at some point it would be good of us to figure out and to communicate to parents what seems to be a trend, so we can say, hey, listen, we understand that your kids are gonna miss this many days for this many things, but it seems to us that as you miss more than 5 days, it's a pretty well documented guarantee that the grades will start falling precipitously as a result, and we can show that with data. So if we could start to track maybe the effects of attendance on achievement, because I think some parents don't maybe not understand that it's that significant. So if we could show that, I think that might help us. The last thing is, I'm thinking about when we describe what it takes to graduate, and I think you alluded to this, but are we now going to say something like you need passing grades in the following courses and this many credits?
Yeah,
Hopefully you'll be earning those at the same time, but maybe not.
Mm-hmm.
So that if you pass an English class but don't get the credit, you still need credits, right?
Exactly,
We get
yep. And that's actually is nice, because that's the existing language. It's both in the handbook as it stands and the program of studies that, you need 4 years of English. The state criteria as well as our local, even to the visual performing arts.
So it already says that, it already says something
Yeah.
about you need
Yeah.
passing grades and then this many credits, not you need credits in the following classes?
Right, you wouldn't earn the credit if it was not a passing grade, so
Right, but
that's
now
somewhat.
now you will, so I just
Mhm.
want to make sure that we just change that.
Well, if you're earning the grade, you're not earning the credit.
I understand that, but a lot
Right,
of,
but I think, yeah.
a lot of handbooks that I've, in schools where I've worked, have said things like you need to have credits for the following courses, assuming that they're connected. And if we're disconnecting them, it's gonna need to say you need to pass these classes and earn this many credits.
Yeah, I understand what
Do you understand that? So I just wanna make sure we're clear with people about that.
Right. Right,
If we're
and
just
it might
aggregating
help
them.
to, maybe to understand for us, you can get a passing grade. That grade, because it doesn't have credits attached to it, doesn't get put into your cumulative average, for example.
Correct.
How do you then get the credits? How do you?
So a couple options, some options that exist now, like, credit recovery options, virtual high school, take a class at Northern Essex, retake a class, or take another course in that field is something we're also proposing that we offer in-house. So, but the one good thing additionally is that it doesn't prohibit a kid from advancing. They've met the criteria for success. They had a passing grade, right? But then if you give them this administrative failure, they might get scheduled to retake the same course that they've already got an A or B or C in. So it looks to avoid that frustration as well. So you pass 10th grade year of science, you move on to a grade appropriate 11th grade science, yet you need to make it up. You need to take another science course that we offer, an elective, or outside of our offerings through an approved credit recovery program.
So how does student support, adjustment counselors, guidance counselors help with that credit recovery effort? And what I'm really getting at is, what if a student who can't afford that? We're a public school, what do you do?
So in terms of helping, we have these credit tracking forms that they use, that they meet with students periodically. It is an issue currently, because with the administrative failure, they don't get credit, the kids do need to catch up and retake those. Students that don't have the means to take classes outside of school, there's been some that have been able to get into virtual high school, that's no cost to them at our school. We have the 25 spots per semester. Or in the past, one of the dilemmas has been retaking a course, potentially that they've already passed, which is kind of a waste of time and space and resources.
So
It takes a seat.
So you do have some options should somebody be in a spot where they just don't have the resources to afford those credit, those recovery alternatives. Because what I'm driving at is, when you look at this, and again, I was curious how student support monitors, if you will, the student who has, say, 8 unexcused absences, but has a ton of excused ones because they were ill or something happened. How does support reach that student?
It's tricky, because that's really at the teacher grade book level too. And so if a kid's absent on any given day, it's not yet excused, because that requires documentation. So as far as the teacher knows, they're absent. But there's got to be that manual cross-referencing from the updated daily attendance and the reports that go out. And a lot of it just goes right through me as well. We check that before we issue report cards. We try to make report cards consistent from one grade to the next. Kid that's got 12 absences in every single class, yet they're getting a grade here and not a grade there. So we go back and check with the teachers. So we take some time before we issue those. It's manual labor basically goes into it.
It sounds like the concern that you're hearing is doing what you're doing, which is making sure kids don't slip between the cracks. That what is there to make sure that we're seeing what we need to see. And it sounds like you have been pretty thoughtful about that, and I would assume that we make this change, it goes forward, and you're looking at this in an ongoing way to how do we tweak it? How do we, what are there more triggers? Are there more benchmarks in these kids' lives that will trigger interventions?
Can I just, one last question, it's something that just popped in, I was listening to Steve talk. we have a certain percentage of kids right now at the high school that might be considered chronically absent. Yes, do we have some of them? And so I'm thinking if you're chronically absent at the high school, there's a chance, even if you're passing the class, you might not get credit for 4 or 5 or 6 classes.
It
That
is
could happen.
possible.
It's possible, so I'm imagining to retake those credits becomes quite a burden.
Right.
And so I'm trying to think, or even 2 classes a year, like if they're just missing sporadically, like we may need to think about a way to help students work over the summer to do some of this, or I'm just trying to imagine a student who already has an absentee issue trying to now make up these extra credits over time. It's just something to, we are talking about taking extra classes.
And just to give you some measure of perspective, I would estimate maybe we're talking 5 to 8 kids per semester who could land in violation for the whole school.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about unexcused absences for the academic penalty, the no credit penalty year. Whereas they could all be excused with doctor's notes and you could still be labeled as chronically absent for the state. So it'd be no penalty, no credit loss if they're excused.
And having
also
the opportunity to sit in Mike's meetings that he runs with the student support team, all of those kids pretty much, they all have plans that are in place and well communicated with the teachers, and the teachers are just, they're phenomenal in terms of their flexibility in working with each individual case.
Absolutely, so I mean, I'm sure that would help them get the grade. I'm thinking about the attendance, like the strict line of attendance, we might think about how to recover
one other
credit.
thing I want to say, and it kind of addresses your question earlier, Steve, and I just didn't think of it at the moment, but to that point, there is that due process and appeal hearing, and more often than not, it's more of an incentive-based program that we put together. It's a review committee that gets convened, and the handbook defines the kind of makeup of that committee. Often if it's a health-related concern, I have a nurse, a counselor, myself, I'll meet with the kid and the family, and we just try to get them to do better the next semester, and like a buyback program. And so we have some latitude to how can we reinstore those credits that were lost so that you're not paying for courses, tripling up on classes, so.
You could do carbon trading with the perfect attendance kids.
So,
Right.
So that's been a good model too.
Well, so I think that's the dilemma in the sense of what the state's categorizing as chronic absenteeism. Our people working with the administration, those students may not fail the classes. So they're developing plans, the accommodations. The teachers are, allowing like makeup work. They're working with the students, the families, especially when there's issues going on to support the families. But so on our end, it's not a chronic absenteeism in the sense of the students losing credit. But on the state's end, when we report those absences, it's, so that's, and as Andy and Mike have been working, with the students and families, it's a handful of students who really fall into that, as they said, 5 students per year, but we're still working with those families. So it's not necessarily they're getting AFs across the board, they're still working with the families and, providing a lot of interventions along the way.
So that's well thought out.
You all right if we move on to the second one?
Should we vote on each
You wanna
one?
go one by one?
Policy recommends the change.
Policy recommends a change. I would only add to this, Mr. Testa, that we make sure that we do go back to 3.2, or whatever it is, 3.3, and remove the administrative failure from the list of grades.
Yeah.
Just so that we're consistent with that.
So we can certainly move this. Is
Yep,
somebody gonna move it?
Policy committee moves approval of this change on the attendance portion of the high school handbook.
We have a second.
Second?
Further discussion?
Kind of Tyler.
Yeah.
I'll give it to you.
It was me.
Give it to me, I'm in the middle of
Seats
these
give
guys.
them better looks.
Well, I saw them bump each other, so somebody might have been disqualified, but.
I heard voices, but I don't know.
Uh-oh, you're hearing voices again?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes with our support. Thank you.
So the second change that we're looking to implement is just to add a little bit more for how we're responding to the student vaping epidemic, and we're gonna look to actually work with the middle school as well. But in terms, and we've been doing a lot of work really over the last 4 to 6 months, I would say, through the leadership of Kathy Riccio and our interventionists at each school, so our wellness teachers, with Jay Murphy and Amy Heath, as well as the nurses and counselors, and trying to now get student voice involved in this at the high school level. It's been something that we've talked about with big student groups. The Interact Club wants to get involved because they just represent a large number of kids, and our student council. So the issue, and I'll go back a little bit, is that probably 3 or 4 years ago, we had handbook language that basically was antiquated language to talk about cigarettes. And we didn't really have a lot of kids that were smoking cigarettes, and the penalty was a $100 fine that we had no means to implement. It was probably a city ordinance that somehow fell in a student handbook many, many years ago and just stayed there. And then we had this emergence of e-cigarettes and vapes and larger reservoir type ones that started to be seen in schools several years ago. And so 2 or 3 years ago, my wellness teacher and I were talking about what else we can do to address it and also have a layer of like a restorative model to it. And so she put together a curriculum. And so on strike one offense that we brought before the school committee a couple of years ago, is we're looking to keep something very similar, but to ramp it up a little bit, I guess, in short. So what happens now is a student gets caught with the paraphernalia or in the act of vaping. If we're able to, we'll get a hold of the parent, have the parent come in, pick them up, dismiss them for the day. But then they have to participate in approximately 1 hour after school vaping intervention program with a pre-test, a post-test, some curriculum that Amy has designed. And the problem that she's brought to me is that it's just a one-off. There's no, you don't get another touch point with that kid and see how they're doing. So while it's been good, it hasn't necessarily been a deterrent, and nor has it been robust enough to just know if the kid's kind of hanging in there, or is it helping them get healthier. So the thought is that we're going to do something very much in the same spirit of that, but to ramp it up to probably be 4 to 5 times. So if they get caught, they'd have to go to a class after school on week 1, and then they'd have to go to class number 2 after school on week 2, and week 3, week 4, and week 5. Now the proposal that I have in front of you is intentionally vague on a couple of points because a lot of this is going to be designed over summer curriculum money that our teachers are going to get to continue to pull this together, and it's still very much in the works. So a lot of the policy is going to be the same. It's really a matter of increasing from 1 intervention class after school to what we envision probably being 5 and led by multiple different staff members. The nurses want in on it. The school resource officer would like to be a participant in this. We would like to see maybe our school adjustment counselors get involved, and they would each have a different component of the 5-step curriculum if it actually lands at 5 steps. And we're going to call it a school-based diversion program, kind of modeled after the juvenile justice system, where if students find themselves in violation of a law and have to go before a magistrate or a judge, if they do X, Y, and Z and appease the court, then it gets wiped off their record. So this would be a way of phrasing to students that we're not in the business of suspending kids, particularly for things that are starting to emerge as health needs. We want to help you, and we want to offer something more intensive than what we have been offering, because we're starting to see kids who are really struggling. And so now if I get a call from a parent that says, what can you offer? Maybe this kid could participate and benefit from it without it being a response to a violation. So it's hopefully a step in the right direction, although I suspect I might be sitting here a year from now too, because this behavior and the vaping problem has really, really taken off in the last 2 years.
Mike, is there some particular research magic about 5 weeks that are consecutive? And sort of what I'm driving at is there any research or data or thinking that maybe stretching it out over 10 weeks with meeting every 2 weeks might last an entire semester and give somebody more support? I just wondered if 5 weeks was sort of arbitrary or...
No, and the number isn't really in the policy as I put forth. We had it there initially through some meetings with staff from both middle school and high school, thinking that might be about right. But it's going to take some more time to think that through and look at sample curriculum. So they're looking at samples from, we had staff in from UMass Medical at our last staff development early release day, and also getting behind some of these research-based best practices. So UMass Medical in Stanford right now, as well as available stuff from the CDC, is where they're looking to take curriculum. So there isn't. 5 was, wasn't entirely arbitrary. There was an 8-week program they saw, but you could maybe stretch that out over a longer duration.
Yeah, I just wondered if giving a kid support for the entire half of year, semester might.
I think some of it was manpower and who's looking to get involved. Which staff said they want in. I think we can gather up about 5 people. That's really more of where it came from.
I mean, from my point of view, I'm comfortable with the amorphousness of it right now, because I really want it to be driven by what you guys think is best and not sort of lock everything in.
One of the reasons the policy committee is recommending this change right now, even though it's still half-baked, it's still in the process of being defined, is that we want.
Some people see it as half-baked and some see it as half-unbaked. I might prefer to see it as half-baked.
It's all baked around there.
It's halfway there, or it's more than halfway there, but if we don't put anything into the policy right now, or into the handbook right now, they've got no way of enforcing it when school starts again. So it's a little bit, we need to get the handbook to the printer, and so we're trying to say, okay, how can we put this in there in a way that gives the school administration the greatest amount of flexibility to put a robust program into place? And that's what we're intending to do here.
And the other add-in was to say that the student would do weekly check-ins with the school adjustment counselor throughout the duration of their program, whatever that is.
So I would be comfortable just writing in, participate in the diversion program. And that way, as time goes on, you can let them know what it looks like day one. This is what it is. Because I fully trust you with that flexibility of it. So I love that you guys have tackled this. I love that it's got restorative bent to it, but still some consequences if it's not followed through on. I love that you're talking to the NOC, because it would be foolish of us to think that this is just a high school program problem. Sorry. My question becomes with the idea of vaping versus controlled substances, especially in the age of marijuana legalization. Because now I would think vapes, marijuana, and alcohol follow the same sort of thing. They are legal products being possessed illegally, definitely brought to schools illegally. So, like, if a student shows up with, with the bag of marijuana, are we going to have a similar scenario here? Like, I don't know how that plays out. In the policy book, we do talk about alcohol, tobacco, and drug use, like, as one sort of lump effort. So I don't want to stop this in order to do that, but I think we need to think about, especially as we move on with legalization and maybe even end up by year's end with a store in town, like, what's that going to look like? Or Salisbury, or, what is that going to look like for our kids, and how are we going to present efforts to divert? So I guess that's what's on my mind. And then
There is not.
And
this
then
would be new.
Do we need to look at this in light of this? Like, do we need to?
I think, I think part of what I'd like to hear from the good news is the policy manual can be changed fairly quickly. The handbook is printed once a year. So we can, once we have a better idea as to what the program looks like, I think we may need to go back and tweak the wording on our policy. And the other thing that I think Dave's comment is right, as you're looking at the curriculums, are you looking at it specifically around vaping, or are you looking at it substance abuse in general?
So this is specifically to target in on vaping nicotine and nicotine addiction that's emerging with our kids big time. The gray area is, or the thing I've always struggled with is, you get this pretty severe consequence, X number of days out suspended if it's alcohol or if it's marijuana. And in the last couple of years, it's been you got to go see the wellness teacher for an hour after school if it's a vape.
Right.
But I don't think we'd suspend a kid for 5 days for having a pack of Marlboros with them either. And that had never been the policy. So we're trying to not just assume that all vapes are nicotine-based. And that's an area where there's going to be test kits available in the future. So, but right now, this is a response to nicotine vaping.
Okay.
specifically.
But the point definitely taken that,
Yeah.
you know, outside of the consequences that are clear for other substances brought into the building, what is the possible intervention that happens?
Intervention program.
Yeah, I definitely hear that.
Because we do, in our policy, we do put them into one single policy.
Right.
Which is probably okay for policy, and it needs to be different approaches for different issues in the handbook. But I'm just very enthusiastic about this whole idea
Yeah,
of
it's great.
an educational intervention for substance abuse in general, that I'd love to see something, and it might not be exclusively based with us, it might be something that we can do with youth services or something, I don't know, but seeing where we can build upon that.
I'm so glad you brought that up. I'll tell you a little bit more during the assistant superintendent's report, but we have a basic outline of the work that we hope to do district-wide around this topic. Some of it will be started this summer. But youth services and the Beacon Coalition are part of that district purview for this work.
Excellent.
So a summary of the change, we can move it?
Can I just, one question here, since we have talked about the closeness with the middle school. Does anybody know what the middle school handbook says about this, and is it similar to what is being proposed?
I don't know what the handbook says.
Yeah, I'm just, but
It's gonna be a similar.
Yeah.
can we ensure
yes.
that? Because I think that's
Oh,
really
yes.
important to do, because
Yes.
your eighth grade kids are
Right.
literally days of being recognized as
Exactly.
rising freshmen.
So that's been, I think, the great piece, not only just this collaboration around the vaping, but both the high school and the middle school administration meet on a regular basis, looking at curriculum instruction assessment, along with having some consistency. And this proposal is very similar to what Principal Furlong and Mr. Marcos will be doing with their students at the middle school, absolutely.
Well, I move that the recommended changes for, I guess, existing policy 6.28 are approved as read.
Second.
Second?
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Well, I'm glad we got the tough items out of the way.
That's right. All right, back to Mr. Wall.
I guess our next conversation has to do with the work that you've been doing about valedictorian and salutatorian and the change in the handbook around it.
Yeah, so that was one of the lengthiest discussion I think we've had at the school council level, was how are we gonna rectify what the council sees as a contradiction within the current handbook, that by definition, it defines Val as a student with the highest
GPA.
GPA.
There's a difference.
And then the
that's
second
six.
highest GPA for the salutatorian. So there was discussion about what do we do about that. The other thing that came out through our discussions was that nowhere has anyone seen any documentation that the Val and Sal are the speakers at graduation. It's just happened by tradition. And so we kind of had two separate discussions. One was, should we keep Val and Sal, or do we eliminate that to be consistent with not ranking students? And the secondary conversation was, how do we recognize students, and then how would we go ahead and select kids to speak at graduation if we were to do away with the designation of Val and Sal? So we took some input, we had a nice discussion with teachers, with our parent reps, with the students that were at the school council. I put some stuff together, ran it by Andy, I floated it back out to the membership of the school council. And then when we met in the subcommittee, collectively, we thought, don't rush into something, and you need to have a stronger process if you're gonna do something that touches this community as deeply as how we're gonna select student speakers at graduation. So the proposal would simply be, for now, to do away and eliminate any reference to Val and Sal as they currently stand, because it doesn't say that they are speakers at graduation. It just defines them as having the number 1 and number 2 highest weighted GPA. And then, with the promise that we get back with our students and our staff and community throughout the fall and be ready to come back to the school committee for a proposal for how we were going to select our speakers and otherwise recognize kids for overall academic excellence. So The proposal is eliminate two references to Val and Sal in the current handbook.
So there's nothing in the handbook that says the Val and Sal speak at graduation?
Correct.
Even from one from like the 60s, right, you found?
No, well.
Or was that
what
yours,
did I say?
right, Steve?
What's that?
The handbook that you found? Right?
Yeah, we didn't.
When you graduated?
There was nothing in there.
Nothing in there either?
But we don't, if we were to go down that road, we wouldn't want to jump quickly into defining a process here and now and asking for approval on that. And we had some thoughts, and it was similar to what some members from the community said about maybe a proposal process or having kids that represent all different facets of the school community, maybe having several types of kids speak. We already have ways that great kids are chosen that are not at all related to their rank or their GPA. We do have a closing remarks speaker. We do have a number of kids that speak at Vespers, at Ivy Day, and they're representative of their class for a number of different ways. Maybe we could engage in a process like that, but there needs to be a process, I guess, is the point, with better communication to the kids in the school, to their parents, and to the community that cares about this topic. So for now, we just find ourselves in a bit of a jam in terms of this guiding document of our handbook that defines Val and Sal, yet the school committee decided that we should not be ranking kids. So we feel like we're in a weird situation.
You still have the GPA.
Right, so that's my question. So
And that's what it's based on in the language. It doesn't say class rank, it says GPA.
How would you know who has the second highest GPA if you don't line them up and put them in order?
You do that, though. You do that.
What other
It
things
could have
went
been
to
the third
rank?
highest kid or the fourth highest kid or the
But
fifth
what other
highest
things
kid.
went into rank other than the GPA? What were the other elements that went into the old ranking system that we got rid of? What was that?
It was just weighted GPA.
That was it?
Yeah.
So it's
1 through
essentially GPA is
180
one
or
and the
whatever.
same.
Okay.
GPA is one and the same.
So
And
while-
as someone mentioned tonight, it's a strict criterion, it's clear.
Right, it's a number, right. So,
It's a strict criteria that is eminently possible of being gained, right?
Pardon me?
It can be gained.
It all depends what you term as game.
What? You know, kids who are making choices about whether to take a difficult course or a course they can ace.
You know, Mr. Mann, I have to share this with you. Back when I was just on this committee, I got a call from a parent who told me about her wanting to get some tutors for her son. And I said, how's he doing in school? She said, he's doing great. I just want him to do as well as he can. And I thought to myself, you know, why would a parent want to hire all these tutors for this student? Well, the young man went on to be a valedictorian here at Newburyport, went on to go to Cornell in an accelerated master's program, and he's now working for Google. He's doing really well. So I guess just as I don't think, and I know it was one of his goals to be a valedictorian. And I think there are kids, and we heard from some today, that simply want us to open up the discussion. You know, you're gonna have, you know, I guess one of the things that struck me when I first heard about, I guess, the willingness, because I know that when we voted on this last year, or whenever we voted, how long ago it was, we didn't vote to eliminate Val and Sal. That was not an ancillary issue. But one of the things that makes me think of, if we're gonna talk about not having rank or grade point, what does that do to, for instance, the person who is selected for the superintendent award, who has to come from the top 5% of the class? Do we eliminate that too? So I guess one of the things that I would
No,
like,
Steve, it's not either or.
Yes, it
It's not
is.
eliminate or not eliminate. It's having a conversation about how we
Right.
do it in a way that's fair and that
Yeah,
makes sense.
yeah, and-
So I don't really,
And-
I'm not comfortable with it being framed as black or white. Either or.
but that's what I'm getting
In or
to.
out.
That's what I'm getting to, though. So I think it's wise, and I heard it from a number of people, that we have a dialogue, and maybe we take a look at how we're recognizing student achievement, and not just at the high school, but at the middle school, when we start to do it. And find out from teachers, administrators, students, parents, whoever, I would recommend the superintendent form an ad hoc group. And whoever comes together, work with us so that we can recognize student achievement, recognize academic excellence in the best way possible, and help our kids, I guess, learn in as healthy way as possible. So as you would say, they're not gaming one another, but I think it's something that once we start to recognize, say, honor roll status in 6th grade, I think we run into, you know, things that we need to monitor. And your own group here, I know on 3.125, the honor roll one, the honor roll, you guys recommended that a group should be created to revise honor roll and align this with our educational priorities and honoring academic achievement. So, I mean, I think there's reason to do that. And I think we're hearing from the community that people want more time to talk and dialogue, and so I just wanted to reiterate that.
Just so that I understand, are you then saying that we shouldn't be taking a vote about eliminating the language, or is that what you're saying?
No, I agree with them. I'm trying to say something since you finished talking.
Go ahead.
You gotta look over the side every once in a while. Chair.
Me having a problem looking to the left? I can't imagine that.
I think we heard, this was a good sampling, I think, of people tonight who came to speak during public comment. We had current students, former student, we had parents, current parents, former people involved in the schools, and I think there was a theme that people really value Val and Sal. Now, how that translates into selection and what that means, I don't think we're there yet. But I think it's an important title, and I don't think that we're ready to just, I mean, I've received texts and, you know, questions today. Are you taking a vote tonight and you're going to do away? I said, no. We're just having the conversation because it all of a sudden became a challenge this year when it came time to select graduation speakers. And, you know, it was, okay, well, how do we do this now that there is no class rank? And I really believe we made the right decision, listening to a group of honor students who came before us and advocated very strongly that it was time to, you know, move forward and do away with this. But I think there's other communities who have made these changes, and we don't have enough information here to make significant changes, and I would not want to eliminate those two terms from our handbook. I think we have to tweak this more, but I don't think I'm comfortable doing that.
Go ahead, Nick.
I think our intent was in removing that definition was, in effect, not to bind whatever efforts are being done by the high school administration with their student council to come up with a new approach to recognizing academic excellence. If we have verbiage in there already that defines those two terms, they may need to be redefined, and that should come out of this discussion, this process that
Well, then why don't we just say something like that? I mean, you did a vaping policy that was vague, okay, open-ended, then you could do the same here, is that, you know, the terms Val and Sal will continue to be tradition in the high school, however, how those
and we'll recognize
students
academic
are
excellence.
recognized, it will
I've got no problem.
evolve during a process the first quarter of the year or something.
Can I offer a motion?
Sure.
That would be, I move to sustain the references to valedictorian and salutatorian within the 2019-2020 Clippers Compass Handbook, and for the school committee to recommend that the superintendent forms an ad hoc committee consisting of representative administrators, guidance counselors, teachers, student council representatives, and others that he may designate. This committee will begin a dialogue next fall with groups of students to find out the best ways to recognize student achievement.
Did you get all that?
I have
Can
written
we,
down.
can we add something to that? There's like an actual time frame, so it's not just some random open-ended.
thought you were gonna do something this summer.
I said next fall, but yeah, I mean,
No, a beginning and ending, so you start
Oh,
in the
sure,
fall and you
yeah.
end by Christmas.
January 1st.
Oh, you know, right, the split in the year, right? Because I can just see it happening forever, and then we end up in August again, and we don't have an answer.
I
Do
think
we
we
have
would
a
also,
second on this, so that we can have discussion?
Second.
So Steve, you are suggesting a motion that preempts the recommendation of the principal and the assistant principal and their student council. That's what this motion does, because they've got a way of dealing with this that they've proposed to us, and your proposal preempts that.
that's my motion as I read it.
So it does preempt that.
If you wanna call it that, sure.
Right, well, they've got a plan about how they want to do this, how their student council wants to handle this. You want the superintendent to step in and do something different.
Well, because I think we have to, I think, I'm not hearing about, I mean, I'm hearing what's written here about the honor roll, and I think that's relevant. The honor roll was brought up on their worksheet, okay, that they presented to us as part of the policies. So, that's that's my motion.
So it's as long as I understand that it preempts and asks the superintendent to step in and preempt.
Dave's got the floor.
Sorry, could we comfortably merge that and say the superintendent will work with the high school to find an appropriate way to bring people together around this topic? Like, I think, Steve, your plan is nice, it's just very prescriptive. And I think Sean and Andy and Mike can find ways to put together a solid conversation throughout a time frame. The one thing I think we have to define is during which year are we going to start potentially redefining? So we're gonna look into this, even though we're looking into this next year, are we gonna say that graduates of the class of 2020 will still have a balance sal based on GPA? Or are we going to say that it's going to become unclear for this coming school year? Because I think we need to set terms. If we're gonna have this sort of thing, and I am not of the school that believes this is as objective as people are defining it, which was part of our initial conversation about moving away from rank, that GPAs are not objective scores. They happen to be scores, but that doesn't mean they're objective. There are lots of ways that can differ throughout the years, but I think we need to figure out what we're actually.
Well, it says that the principal selects the valedictorian and the salad. So what if it was with one factor being the GPA? So that you're looking at that, but you have the opportunity to bring additional factors into selecting these two students.
So are we gonna write that to allow?
Doesn't that open it up to?
Allow the administration to do that, or are we mandating?
It says it already says that he picks.
The way I read that is in reference to the in good standing clause, basically meaning no big disciplinary issues. So it says the valedictorian will have the highest weighted GPA and be a student in good standing as determined by the principal.
Right.
Right, so it's not the kid with the highest rated GPA that just had a major disciplinary thing. And
Absolutely.
we're gonna let them speak.
That clause is defining the good standing. I also just want to make sure that whatever decisions we make, we remember the spirit of doing away with rank was doing away with competition in GPAs. And I think that was the bottom line, whether it led to kids taking different classes or kids finding strategies or whatever else happening. The spirit was that academic achievement is a personal goal. It does not have to be accelerated or diminished by the relationship to other students in the building. And we shouldn't be diminishing someone's academic achievement because it's not as good, or we were talking about, for example, kids who took art classes and is an exceptional painter going to have the GPA as a kid who excels in physics? No, because they're not weighted classes, but we don't want to diminish the fine arts bent student because they don't take weighted classes. So that, all of these things and I don't want to rehash that either, but this was the flavor and the spirit of our vote. And I think we need to think about that, because, you know, we can talk about a lot of things, including tradition, and I wouldn't say that Newburyport owns this tradition, because it's been everywhere, but it's, what we're trying to do is do away with that factor. To tell kids we value all of your work, regardless of your course structure. You've worked hard, you've achieved things. Now, there are other ways to recognize achievement, I get it. Like, we could even have a super high honors that says you got A pluses throughout all 4 years. I don't know how you want to do that, but whatever. That could be another conversation, but whatever conversations we have, the spirit was to do away with the competition between kids over grades, because academic achievement is not a competitive sport.
But Ms. Starkeyser, do you listen to what people said tonight in comment?
I do. They want it to be a competitive sport.
No, they recognize that sometimes you have collaboration and competition. They also recognize that some schools value and maybe reward a valedictorian or salutatorian candidate.
Okay.
Okay? So,
Yeah.
I mean, you gotta listen to your constituents too.
I do listen to them.
Okay? It sounds like, honestly, you're providing your own perspective here.
I am.
Outside of, I'm not hearing you bring in any of that.
So, you know, again, I don't actually, let me say that I don't really think this conversation's headed in a great way. We had a number of people here who were for it, a number of people who were against it. You heard that as well. So I don't think it's really fair to say we're not listening to everybody if we go one way or the other. I just don't, that's not helpful to the
Honestly, Mr.
conversation.
Menon, I feel that by you saying that I'm preempting an effort, that was not correct either.
They
'Cause
came
I'm
in
not
with, they
trying
came
to
in with
do
a
that.
plan. They came in with a plan.
Right.
You are saying, we're not gonna let them figure it out, we're gonna let him figure it out. That, we can
guess-
argue about what preempt means. That was what was on the table here
Right.
tonight.
Okay.
And you put something else on the table here
Yes, I
tonight.
did.
Okay,
That
can
is
we stop at this
And
point?
my
I think it's,
first-
can we just, okay. We have agreement that the principal and vice principal have a strategy to address this difficult situation and to evaluate, right? So I think we're all in agreement that they have come up with a, you know, between student council and focus groups and meeting with community involving the superintendent, leadership team, whatever. So we're all in agreement there, right?
Can I ask a
Okay.
question? Just
Sure.
I want to ask a question to you guys. So this year, we didn't have class rank,
We did not,
and we have a valedictorian and a salutatorian.
correct.
Okay.
Well, we have 4 in the second place.
So are they gonna split the speech into 4?
So we met with the
Before we start for
students and they
second
came
place?
up with different themes that they would focus on at
Okay.
graduation.
So the spirit of it too was, you know, I know in like junior year, I remember getting my card that said what my rank was, and, you know.
Disappointed.
I was okay with it. I was in the middle of the road, but, so that hasn't changed, so like, no one got their rank this year, right? But you guys informed, there still wasn't posted somewhere where someone could find.
It was
I'm
not
just asking
posted.
questions.
No,
like-
it was not posted.
Wasn't, so it's
Correct.
still, so that stayed true, and we still got a valedictorian, salutatorian. Graduation's still gonna happen. Mrs. DeGrenia is gonna be out there teaching them, oh, no, it's not Mrs. D anymore, but Archer Roses and everything else. Okay, I just wanted some clarification about what the process was this year. So,
And just
was
to
that a
keep it-
problem, like?
It was a
did
challenge,
problems arise?
absolutely.
It was, just to
Yeah.
clarify.
Because-
I mean,
because there
I
was
kind of
4,
struggled a
which
little
I've never
bit
heard that before, but
because
yeah.
of the policy that the district has around no class rank, and then finding the language in the handbook. But I think through some constructive dialogue, you know, with the students involved and their parents, you know, we did make the decision to go with, because the policy is the policy. And that's what we went with, which is why when we had the dialogue at the school council, we recognized that it was important to bring this up to the school committee, that there is a conflict in terms of how the language is and how Val and Sal are defined in the handbook based off of the policy that was voted in a year and a half ago or 2 years ago.
And what I struggle with is that a student who was told they would not be ranked may have selected courses based on passions and interests that could have had a negative impact on where they rank because they weren't weighted in the same way. So a student that could have potentially, you know, our number 5 could have been number 4 or 3 or 2 when it comes down to Val and
weighting
Sal.
classes. Stop weighting classes.
I think that is a battle for another day.
Yes, but that's where we're at now,
Well, and I think.
so we're gonna be at the same juncture if we don't come up with a solution
All right,
for
so
now.
you're
Like
going to
here.
go forward with a process that I think we all agree makes sense. And so is there some language we could use that, you know, because I don't think you have enough input to take it out of the handbook and leave it sort of dangling there for the year. I think that there's enough people who are concerned about the title of Sal and Val, and I think we heard more speaking in favor of it than against. I mean, I think people had concerns about
Yep.
how you pick, but I think the title itself is something that has some history and tradition here as well as other schools, so.
And we even had the conversation at the council. I mean, really, the term valediction is really about issuing the farewell.
Right.
You know, so there's a valediction that is delivered at graduation, just like there's a salutatory address that is delivered. How we're defining potentially how those students are chosen is what we want to engage in a process around.
So put that
to
in the
decide.
policy, and so leave it sort of open this year, you know, in terms of that that's what will happen this first quarter.
I think that is the intent of removing that definition of valedictorian and salutatorian. How those terms are defined going forward are part of what needs to happen, but right now, if we don't make that change, it is going to stay with the current grade point average definition. So if we just say,
Why? It doesn't
the high
have
school
to.
recognizes a valedictorian and a salutatorian as defined by, and you can put whatever language you're comfortable with in there.
You state something like,
that
since
considers
this,
academic excellence and
school committee voted
participation.
in 17 to eliminate class rank, and the terms, you know, and who will be selected to be determined by January 1st or something. I don't know why I just don't think we should eliminate it totally from the book.
I'm not suggesting that we're eliminating it totally. I'm just saying that
I get the
we're
sense.
giving the principal and the team that's going to be working on this a chance to define how it should be used.
Right, right.
I am all for talking about how we're gonna use those terms literally, but I get the sense, Steve, listening to the people tonight, that what they wanted to know was who's got the highest GPA and who's got the second highest GPA, not who's delivering which address. So I'm obviously in favor of doing away with ranking. I was then, I still am now. I have no problems not talking about who's number one and number two for the same reasons. So I'm willing to go forward with that. But, I don't know if we all feel that comfortable. If we eliminate those ranks, like, are the names that we're talking about eliminating, are we talking about talking about who's number one and number two in the class? Or are we talking about not calling the speakers at graduation Val and Sal? Because what you guys came tonight, it says, let's do away with the number one and number two, and then let's, in the future, talk about who's gonna give the speeches. But now we're talking about the exact opposite. Like, if I heard you correctly, let's never talk again about one and two, because that's part of the flavor of our previous vote. And then we can use those terms moving forward to talk about who's giving the speeches. Yes?
That's one option.
So where are we at in terms of Steve's?
We have a motion on the floor that basically presents a process for doing the work that needs to get done here.
Can I just make a comment, because I know the school council and the school council members here, I think some of you, the parents, and your school council students have been really working on this, and from my understanding, it seems like you're gonna meet, right in the beginning of school, you're gonna really work this out, and then you're gonna come back to school committee with a proposal regarding the, the speeches, the Val and Sal speeches, or however that process is gonna happen.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right, and our dilemma is that if the language stays as is in the handbook, we're still tying our speakers are valedictorian, salutatorian to how they're ranked by their GPA. And that's why our recommendation, and I'll be honest with you, in just looking at other schools' handbooks, they don't necessarily even state, they don't define valedictorian or salutatorian. You know, schools that usually have a rank, they might, because they have to have a line in there that you have to have been enrolled in our school since sophomore year, have 3 years on the rolls. But not all schools necessarily always define. So from the handbooks that I looked at, some talked about valedictorian, salutatorian, others did not, but they definitely all have a process in which they're deciding on their speakers for graduation. And what we're just looking to accomplish is not have language, or not to have language that kind of still keeps us connected with class rank, which was voted against, but to allow us the flexibility to really engage in a wholehearted process to kind of flesh out the different ideas. And then come back to the school committee with that proposal. And again, like I said earlier, all I really care about is process. And engaging people in dialogue around kind of a common understanding and maintaining the spirit of what was decided or voted on 2 years ago is really what's important. And the kids and the staff were phenomenal earlier this year. As much as the students weren't happy with the rules, they understood the need to have some level of accountability, but there was an appreciation for having a part in the process of making the decision of how we adjusted those. And I feel very confident just now having experienced my first year at this school. It has nothing to do with me. It has to do with the people that live here and send their kids to school here and the teachers that have been hired well before me, just in terms of how they engage in dialogue and come to some type of decision.
Can we, whichever one we go with, whether it's the plan they presented or however that motion.
We've got a motion on the table, so, on the floor, I move the motion.
What'd you say?
Motion's moved, then we're done discussing. And
We vote on Steve's motion, and then we can replace it with something else if we turn it down, or accept it as it is.
Okay, well.
How we vote for it. But we need, parliamentarily, we need to go through Steve's motion first.
Yeah.
Right?
I can't vote on his motion. Can you please repeat it?
All right. I mean, can I revise it?
You can motion to amend, you can't just change it.
All right, can I amend my motion then? Thank you.
Did you get a second?
Yeah.
Okay. Brian, you seconded?
I seconded it, yeah.
Okay. Brian seconded.
Well, I seconded it with
Second, to start
stipulation that
discussion.
we have an end date for whatever the process is.
So he's,
Which he agreed to.
All right, so I'd like to simply amend my motion to, I move to sustain the references to valedictorian and salutatorian within the Clipper Compass 2019-2020 handbook, allowing, I'm just looking for the notes. Sorry, okay. Allowing for high school administration to follow the process that they began with the school council on May 7th, 2019. And then to determine an end date of January 1st, 2020.
so,
Can I have that read back so that we can get a second on it?
I think he's got it written out and he'll give it.
Yeah, I'll write it as so I move to sustain the references to valedictorian and salutatorian within the Clippers Compass 2019-2020 handbook, and to allow high school administration to continue the work that they began with the student council on May 7th, 2019, with an end date of January 1st, 2020.
Is there a second to that motion?
It's an amended motion, so it would go back to the second to see if it accepts
It's
it.
already seconded? Right?
No, if you do accept his amendment to it.
Yes, second.
You do a roll call vote?
Can you read that again?
Yeah, can
have
you read it again? I was
discussion.
gonna ask you.
We have
Are we back in
discussion.
discussion? We should be back in
Yes,
discussion,
we
right?
Actually do have discussion, you're right.
Yeah. Steve, I'm sorry, can you read that again?
Sure. I move to sustain the references to valedictorian and salutatorian within the Clippers Compass 2019-2020 handbook and allow the student council to continue their work that they began on May 7th, 2019, with an end date of January 1st, 2020.
Can I just say something? So the school council has been working on it, right, Principal Wolf? It's not
School
the, not the
council,
student
not the
council.
student, right.
Because we heard from the student member, they're gonna bring that up in the next school. Okay.
And what work is that? Like you said continue the work.
All of this.
But
The
work-
May 7th meeting was an evening meeting with the, not the student council,
Yeah.
but the school council, where we just brought this topic up.
Yep. The work to do
The work.
what? I'm still trying to figure out if we're gonna be using
Right.
the GPAs to define Val and Sal. I think that's the crux of what we need to talk about, right?
No, we're giving it to them to talk about.
But tying their hands for the next year.
But that's the work, are they gonna figure out whether or not to do that, or how to undo that?
It depends. We don't know. It depends on when they come back.
So we want them to come back with a proposal on that topic. I just think we need to be pretty clear about what we're sending them away to do. So they're gonna come back, they're gonna go away starting May 7th and coming back January 1st with a proposal on whether or not to use GPA to define.
No, whether or not to use Sal and Val and what that means and how you determine them.
Versus some other way to recognize.
Okay.
That's my interpretation,
That's
is
fine.
that with Sal and Val staying as the language in the handbook, we're charged with going back to the school to decide how we are defining, how we select the Val and Sal.
Or if continue using them too.
Right.
Now that you've pulled them
So,
out.
okay, I guess, my concern with that statement, I think it's greatly improved, and I almost like all of it, Steve. The part that I'm concerned about, I think, is the part that Dave also raised, and that is that by saying sustain the language as it exists, we're holding on to that language. I think what we're trying to hold on to is the concept of a Val and Sal, and to take out the language about grade point average.
Until further recommended and voted on.
Yeah, so the fact that if we leave it in there, we are still probably asking for one more year on using grade point averages of Val-Sal.
Yes.
And that would take us right back to where we were this January with the confusion that we had. So I firmly believe that, or I would request that Steve's language might be amended to say, sustain the references to valedictorian and salutatorian in the handbook, but omitting the requirement for the highest grade point average.
The two highest.
Yep.
Yeah.
That would give them the flexibility to go and come back with something which is in the spirit of the 2017 policy and is in the,
But would that allow for discussion if you're already deciding to omit it?
we're omitting it only from the handbook right now. We're not omitting it from their discussion.
Okay, so if the council meets with students and they present something,
A compelling reason to keep them? Absolutely. I would agree to that.
Can I have a point of clarification? Steve, did you say suspend or sustain?
sustain,
Ah, I thought you said suspend.
no, sustain.
Okay.
Sustain the references.
So,
And that's why I wrote the references. I didn't, if
Don't
it
you think,
needs
based
to
on what
be-
you said, we should suspend until we have it?
that's what Nick was saying. The change
I'm
suspended.
saying,
I agree.
sustain the references to the valedictorian and salutatorian, but suspend
The definition.
the definition of grade point averages.
Until their work is completed and
Until their work is
brought back to
completed.
us.
Right, it's the definition that
Right.
complicates
Right,
things.
okay.
So are you guys comfortable with that?
I'm comfortable with it. I mean, the idea is to engage our community in that dialogue, but recognizing in the spirit of the decision that was made by the school committee, you know, not tying our graduation speakers to class rank. That's really the biggest thing. Which is why our council, when we made the recommendation, because of the language that was in the handbook, it tied us to going back to ranking students by their GPA to determine those speakers.
So then, Nick, you
But the-
need to make an amendment to,
The graduation speakers, that's not in the handbook.
Correct.
Okay. I know we're tying it all together, but, I mean, we're really just talking about.
Because I think tradition, how it works is the valedictorian and the salutatorian are your
In
speakers
this,
at
I would take
graduation.
away
No,
the
no,
highest
I-
weighted grade point average.
And that's how they're
The student-
recognized, is through their speaking.
Suspending,
Sustain
Is it possible, as a side note,
valedictorian and salutatorian.
if a student was applying to a college that wanted to know if they were number one in the class,
reference to
is it
the-
possible to tell them you have the highest GPA or not?
Not if we do not do rank.
Is it possible for you guys to hit a button and tell them up or down vote?
Our policy is we don't rank, and that's in our profile. So they wouldn't, and a lot of schools now have already made that shift. And at the college level,
So that's,
mean-
and that's what the college is, right when you apply, it says, did your school rank? Because remember, it's just not Newburyport High School, it's
Right.
thousands of high schools, so a kid from Mississippi, a kid from Texas. So that's the first question, does your school rank? And if you say no, then they don't hold a school that's not ranking versus a school that does rank.
If a student is the valedictorian on the basis of whatever hour, and they apply to a school, does that school then, because they're the valedictorian, not reweight their grades according to what they do? No, they reweight the
correct,
grades
they use
anyway.
the school profiles
Right.
to put all students on the same playing field. So the reality is, if you are from a school that ranks, it's really irrelevant. It's all based off of how your profile, what the college formula is doing to compare you to a student from a school in Texas, so that you have an equal playing field.
and that was really the motivation behind, I think, our willing to move forward and make this vote, because that's what's happening.
Right. Colleges
Across the
strip,
country.
right,
Yeah.
they strip the honors points, all level courses, it's an unweighted GPA, so.
I guess second side conversation, and I know we said we're gonna talk about it another time, so that's fine, but are there other things we use weighted grades for, or is the whole idea of weighted grades specifically to support the ranking process?
Wow, is that a question? That's a great question.
Thanks, Bruce.
I mean, your GPA is your personal GPA.
I
you
know,
know,
but like,
it's,
if we weren't ranking and we weren't doing number one and number two, could we easily then not bother weighting grades anymore? Like, do they serve any purpose to then, to still be comparing, you know, pottery to physics?
Right. Good
Yeah,
question.
that's a good question.
Like, at that point, if you achieve, and we're not competing, so we don't need to try to offset the, because that's what weighting grade does, it offsets the
Right, like a rigor
difficulty,
factor.
the rigor
Yeah.
factor.
Except for the fact that the student still submits with their
We
transcript.
need to stop. We need to stop. We have a motion on the table, we're
Well, they were
taking
working
side
on, they were working on the
conversations.
language. I was giving them time to type
All right, so you're modifying his,
during this commercial break.
I just want recommendations to what the final date will be, the end date. Because I originally said January 1st, but I know that's a holiday, so.
Whenever we come back from break, whatever that.
First meeting in
whatever
January,
the- yeah,
which we're
right.
about to vote on.
First school committee meeting in
January
January.
January 3rd, that would be inauguration.
January
Second
3rd.
meeting in January.
Second
I'm
meeting in
saying just
January.
basically after winter break, that's all, you know. So
Where'd it go?
everyone's back, and we go.
Let's go.
Actually, it's the 6th.
Okay.
January 6th
Well, presumably we.
is our first
vote on
business
the
meeting.
calendar, right?
But that's
So the first
inauguration.
business meeting, want to do the first or the second?
Well, the second one is the retreat, so then it would be February 3rd.
All right, so January 6th for first.
Or could we do December 16th?
No, first meeting in January 6th.
Except that the
That's
first
gonna be
meeting could be inauguration.
inauguration.
Remember when we did not have a mayor's race, there was inauguration at City Hall with the councilors and school committee members.
Do you guys think
That could
we
be
could
your
do-
meeting on the 3rd, on the 6th.
Do you guys think we could do December 16th?
Yeah, we can definitely make that happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
December 16th.
2019.
Thank you.
I'll read this. I move to sustain the references to valedictorian and salutatorian within the 2019-2020 Clippers Compass Handbook and suspending the reference to using the highest 2 grade point averages and continue the work that the school council began on May 7th, 2019 with an end date at the school committee meeting on December 16th, 2019.
To do what?
To decide how to define, right?
I think it's missing the,
Well, that's the thing. We're suspending the definitions, but their work that they're coming back to us on December 16th is going to make recommendations on how to define those terms.
Okay.
We're suspending those definitions until December 16th.
Said this one was gonna be a fun one.
And I knew I was not gonna earn that
So,
tonight.
with
One more time.
recommendations on defining those terms.
okay. Can you read it one more time, please?
Sure. I move to sustain the references to valedictorian and salutatorian within the 2019-2020 Clippers Compass Handbook. I'm going to say while suspending the reference to using the highest 2 grade point averages and continue the work that the school council began on May 7th, 2019 with an end date at the school committee, with an end date of December 16th, 2019 at the school committee with recommendations defining those terms.
Is that an acceptable amendment to the second?
Me? Yes. Do a second again? How does that work?
Yes.
Fourth.
Just say yes.
Second
Yes.
and third tower.
Discussion. I would just say that I really appreciate that we are honoring the work of the school council and honoring and celebrating their work in this, because I think the school councils, certainly in the time that John has been here, but over the last couple of years, have really been very important in the schools. Any other comments?
My only thought is that we might want to either pull the minutes or the videos. If anybody on the school council wants to watch through the discussion or read through the transcript to get a good sense of why we did away with rank, because there was a presentation done by the, right, and they were the top tier of our students, so I don't know how we find those documents so that people who are talking about this moving forward remember why.
Ask Quinn, she was a key speaker during that time.
Quinn, would you come back and recreate everything you did 2 years ago?
Could you go and speak to the school council before they leave?
Yeah. So just somehow, if we help them understand what that discussion was all about and why we made our original choice.
I'm sure that those meetings are recorded, we can go back to
What
the
the day
archives
is
and
and
pull
ask
the
these
videos.
guys.
Yeah. Okay, that's all. Go ahead.
I'd like to recommend a
Yeah,
roll call
hold on.
vote.
Wait, Angela, what'd you want to say?
I just have a clarifying question, if I may. I noticed in the language that was presented tonight that the decisions were really around determining student speaker, how to define student speaker at graduation. And I'm just questioning whether the language of saying that you'll be defining Sal and Val still gives you the flexibility around that.
Absolutely. that's understood, I think.
Yes.
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 Good clarification point, though, Ms. Bick. Okay,
Roll call.
please.
Mr. Hawkeizer,
Yes.
Mr. Callahan,
Yes.
Mr. DeCanter,
Yes?
I got to go first.
Mr. Cole,
Yes.
Mr. Menon,
Yes.
Mayor Holliday,
Yes.
Mr. Reardon,
Yes.
unanimous.
So I assume that the school council and the principal understand what they've been charged with here.
Yes.
Good. Can we have a roll call vote on that?
Thanks, you guys. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the Chartwell's contract for renewal.
Great. We have Nancy Lysick here, so, but before we talk about the renewal, I know we provided some documents regarding the breakfast program. And I want to thank Pam Keeley and our food service. If you look at that data from last year to this year, it's increased significantly. So if you look at like the paid, right, we're really excited about that. So last year,
Is this the
paid
yellow one, Sean?
breakfast, what's that?
Is this the yellow? Yeah, that one.
Yes, I think there was PowerPoint in there, just some information on that, on our breakfast program.
Oh,
So,
right,
yeah, so in 2017-18, we had 1,900 students take advantage of the breakfast program, and this year, in April, we're up to almost 7,000 students. 7,000 breakfasts served. For our reduced, it was 486 last year, and this year, we're at 635. Free and reduced, last year was 1,391, and this year is 4,203 breakfasts. And then if you look at the totals from 2017 and 18, it was 3,700. And then this year, as April 30th, it's 11, almost 12,000 breakfasts is served. And I just think that that's a great achievement. And what's Pam Keeley and her team have done, so we were denied grants for the national breakfast programs. We didn't qualify. And so she went out working with the Institution of Savings Charitable Branch, got the breakfast cart, and then in addition, last year, 2017-18, before I came to Newburyport, she also got a grant for $20,000 of equipment. So this breakfast program is just, I think, really making a difference in our kids' lives and in the families. So we're excited about that. The contract that you have is, we're going into year 5 of a 5-year contract. And I know Nancy Lysick's here to answer any of those type of questions, because she's been overseeing that contract for the past 5 years before I got here. So we're recommending for the school committee to approve year 5 of the 5-year contract to move forward with Chartwell's.
I have a question. So does the school committee votes on this because the state mandates that we vote on it? Is that why we're part of this process?
Yes.
Yeah, this is something we need to.
I only ask because it says documents approved by this office may not be changed prior to execution, blah, blah, blah. So this is pretty much set. Our vote is kind of like, what, rubber stamp, right?
Is it up or down?
Up or down, right. So it's, we could never say, no, I want to change this at all. We have no part of that, right?
Well, we would have to do that.
Right,
Right,
but it
Nancy?
must
We
be-
would have to do
Right.
it before they reviewed it. We would have to make recommendations for changing.
Must be reviewed and approved prior.
Right.
Since we're in the
Right,
fifth
and I'm sure
year.
that would never happen anyway, but if that is an option, in theory, why do we never see it until like the end part? Why don't we see it in process? Or is that not our purview?
When we're negotiating a new contract.
I think it's always been the assumption that once you vote on it, you're executing it.
Okay.
And you can't execute it until DESI approves it. It's kind of a,
Okay.
not the perfect system.
Just strange.
But there's gonna be a new one after next year, there's gonna be a brand new one that starts over? Okay.
Yeah, we'll send it out for bid.
Okay.
Nancy, were there any changes that the DESI made in the contract?
No.
So it's the same contract as previous? Okay.
I would ask Steve, who I know has been following this, and Nancy, is, my read of the data is that things are improving financially. Is that accurate? Because I know that you've been following it closely, Steve.
Well, not as closely as in years past, but I would believe that increased participation is always good. And the fact that we're able to, get some reimbursements on the free and reduced lunch is really a big help. So, I think, and I don't recall the last time we needed to get a transfer.
We haven't done one yet.
Okay, so.
I expect to have to do one by the end of the year.
End of the year is always a
And
time to.
excuse me, there was one change to the original amendment that Chartwell sent me. I lowered the enrollment figure. That's the only thing we changed from last year to this year. It was a little high.
Motion to approve the Chartwell's contract for the fifth year for 2019 and 2020.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
I second.
School committee calendar, first reading. You have something to tell us?
We were looking, we sent out a Google Doc and we got some responses. We looked at Wednesday, July 31st, that we didn't get all the responses, so we penciled that in as a summer retreat, similar to the day we used this past summer. So.
That was a Tuesday this summer, though, right? This is a Wednesday.
Correct, so this one would be a Wednesday, July 31st.
I think I was the
9
first
to
one
1.
respond.
What's that?
I think I was the first one to respond. I came in, I was like, bang, go, 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 go.
But who's going?
It's the star. Brian gets the
I just
buck
want this to be
tonight.
settled right now.
So,
Yeah, but my response was better.
Probably. He wanted to do Saturday mornings with breakfast and everything.
Right.
that's right.
Well, it doesn't mean we can't have breakfast.
That's true.
Right? Right, Nick?
Absolutely.
I have a question. So at the last July, can I ask a question? Is that correct? We discussed potentially, these are all business meeting, but that some meetings maybe are more collaborative with the public. And I was wondering if, so the recognition things are great. Like today's thing was awesome. Those kids were great. But I wonder if those would be better at a non-standard business meeting, because they take up a fair amount of time if we think about this, because it's just first reading, yeah? So that the standard meetings are just like, warrants, the business, regular stuff, and then we have those collaborative ones, maybe every third meeting or whatever we decide, and that's where we do the hey community, because while it's great to recognize all those kids, I don't really know if that's part of what we do as a school committee, right? As a community, sure, but as a school committee, I don't know if it's our thing to, how am I trying to say this? I don't know if a business meeting is necessarily the right place for it, but if we have one of the collaborative ones and people can actually talk to us and go back and forth, then that's a better venue for that type of performance. I don't know. Just an idea.
I know what you're saying.
Right? And I'd love to see those meetings anyway, because it's, what's that gentleman's name? Ralph?
Dr. O.
Right. I mean, I don't know if I would do the public comment at the end, because everybody's, look, it's 9:30, right? You don't want to do that. But if people were able to be talked, I know before I got on the school committee, it was very frustrating to do public comment. You just kind of get the thank you, and you don't really feel like anything's happening. So if we had more options where people could actually talk to us about, and you still have your agenda, you pick X topics, and then you say, okay, and you give everybody a limited thing, you have 2 minutes to respond and all that stuff, but it's a conversation, not just being addressed.
We had talked about having workshop style.
Yeah, that's right, yeah,
workshop
yes.
style meetings. Either like spend the whole time on one topic if it's big enough, or different topics, however we want to put that together. And I think we had even talked about merging that with an idea you brought up once about the curriculum or ways to do presentations or something, I don't know. So is that something we need to decide now, or can we vote on this calendar?
But I was thinking maybe that could be part of the retreat, right, as we're going into, have a discussion on looking at some of those things.
If we can go ahead, I think, and approve this calendar and have a discussion at the retreat about how we want to use these dates, we wouldn't be changing the dates. We would be changing
We're gonna vote on
the
the
agendas,
dates.
the format.
Okay.
So I think that that's how I would view approving these dates. We're locking the dates in. How we decide to move those meetings, we can talk about at a retreat, we can talk about at a future school committee meeting. We have no problem with that.
Okay.
The only concern I had was the first meeting in January, the 6th, because I really believe that that's inauguration for school committee members who are reelected and for the city council, and that's a joint, yes. Because it's the first Monday after the 1st, unless the Monday's a holiday, then it's the 2nd. It's the day after. It's a Tuesday, but it's January's odd this year because the first Monday is until the 6th.
Right.
You know, so it's not. So that's the only thing. I think the 6th might be eliminated as a meeting.
Well,
I'm all for that.
it would still be a meeting.
No, but it would
Inauguration is
be,
open to public, right?
inauguration, yes.
It's still a public meeting.
Still a meeting, right?
Yeah,
Right.
still a meeting.
Right. Anyway.
Just don't want to make it one of our collaborative meetings. Good. So
I highlighted that,
Yeah,
just so.
just so
they
that,
know.
that could be, that format could be changed, the time could be changed, I'm not sure.
Okay.
So this is the first reading, and it looks like we're not making any significant changes to it.
The only thing I think, I don't know if I brought this up, but there are fewer Mondays in the school calendar than any of the day of the week. And I wonder if we've ever thought about not meeting on Mondays.
All the time.
Like, could we meet on
Saturday
Tuesdays?
mornings, for example.
Right. As long as there's paella or something.
If we met on Tuesdays, there would be fewer alterations to the calendar.
And sometimes we go on a Tuesday anyway if the mayor has to be
Right.
at city council, right?
That's charter. That's a charter issue, though, right?
No, it
Would
says
you
here that we
see it
have
as
to
a charter
meet.
issue?
No, it's in the
On
charter.
Saturdays?
But
No,
that's
to
coming up too,
change the
right?
day that we meet.
Does it say in the charter we have to meet on Mondays?
No.
I thought it
I thought it did. It did,
Really?
it says, like, because the city council meets the
Yeah.
first and fourth.
think it is in the
or
charter.
Second and fourth, and school committee
So
first and
we're
third.
doing charter
It's School
review
Administration
soon anyway.
101 to know that you never have your staff meetings on a Monday because there are fewer Mondays in the school calendar than any other day of the year, any other day of the week. So you always miss your meetings.
I wouldn't say I missed them, Dave.
You
Well, we'll
could-
take it up in the charter review.
You had a
Stand for the charter review. Yeah, no, we can give, when the charter review happens, which should be happening soon, we
Yes.
will have the opportunity to give testimony about what we think. And that's,
Okay.
that's fine.
Okay, then I move to approve the
First
school
reading.
committee meeting schedule as drafted.
First reading, yeah.
First reading.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Good. Assistant Superintendent's report, I think, if Angela's still here.
Thank you. I'm going to update you on how we're doing with our enrollment for the second round of our skills-based education PD that's coming up right at the end of June. As you know, in cohort 1, we started with 44 teachers across the district that participated in cohort 1, and I'm happy to say that 40 of those 44 are coming back for the second session in June. We're starting our second cohort also at the same time, and we have an additional 26 teachers that will be joining us for the second cohort. We're going to, I just ordered these today, we're going to include a common book that they're going to work from. It's called 10 Mind Frames for Visible Learning, Teaching for Success. It's very nicely aligned with all of the work that we're doing around the skills-based learning. So that's going to be kind of nice too, that we're going to start using a professional text that we'll be working from along with this. Other summer professional development, the registration is out. I believe that Superintendent Gallagher had sent you the link to our registration for that, so you saw the courses that we were offering. And we have,
Yeah, they sent you a link.
I think it was maybe not last week,
Yeah,
but the
the
week
memo.
before.
Yeah.
But if any of you are interested, I can send that to you again. But some of the other offerings are inclusionary classroom, English language learning and special education, visible learning and literacy and math, technology boot camp, learning stations, Edulastic, maximizing Google Classroom, and digital tools for assessment. And those registrations are coming along beautifully. Teachers are signing up for that. We're running classes, I believe we're running classes, I'm looking at the calendars, every week of the summer except the week of 4th of July. So it's a nice opportunity where we have a nice long summer. Our teachers have plenty of opportunity to participate. As Andy and Mike were talking about starting to develop some curriculum around vaping, we really started looking at that as a district-wide initiative that needs to happen. We know that the only way to really put a prevention model in place is to start very young. And so in this work, we have 10 teachers, either wellness health teachers or nurses, that are involved in summer curriculum room work around really building a campaign against vaping. And they've put together a proposal for me to look at in their early work, and there'll be a component that's around student leadership, which includes student education. There'll be a parent education component. There'll be a vaping task force for the high school. That staff education will fall under this. Procedures around being caught vaping, and then the third branch of the campaign is working with the Beacon Coalition and Youth Services, and we'll be talking about medical supports and evaluations and follow-ups. So we're excited about the work, hope to develop at least the skeleton of a comprehensive plan in educating not only our students, but educating the families of Newburyport and our staff around this very important health issue that is growing kind of exponentially in the district. So that is on dock, and then because it's a long summer, I think we had a lot of teachers very interested in doing some summer curriculum writing. And so we'll be doing some that are associated with the skills-based learning. We have 19 proposals for skills-based learning curriculum writing projects and 28 teachers that would be involved in that. And in addition to that, beyond the summer curriculum work that's the health curriculum development or the skills-based curriculum development, we have 42 other projects proposed that encompasses 60 teachers involved in that. So I have the difficult work of now really plowing through all of those proposals and looking at them very closely to see how we can fund the majority of these projects and perhaps modify some of the proposals so that we can accommodate everybody in some way around these proposals. So I'll give you a more detailed update on that in our next meeting, because I will have done that work at that time. And then lastly, we're finalizing our plans for summer programs, including our summer farmers market. We're going to bring that back again. Right now it is scheduled for Tuesdays during the 6 weeks of summer programming. But we just have a message out to the Y. If the Y program decides that they'd like to participate, we will move it to Wednesdays because they do field trips on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So we're just waiting to hear back from them. And then also, I would like to remind you all that we have the ribbon cutting on this Friday at 9:30 for the Jacqueline Stewart Bennett Mindfulness and Wellness Space at the middle school. And that's it.
God, sorry. Nope.
The STEM thing's going on Friday morning as well, right?
Yes.
Is that Thursday or?
That is, no, there's,
Friday.
we have two STEM expos this week. We have the STEM Expo, and thank you, Brian, for bringing that up. We have the STEM Expo at the Bresnahan School on Thursday.
Okay.
And that is going from 9 o'clock to 1 o'clock. And we have the STEM Expo at the Mullen School on Friday morning from 9 to 11. So both of our elementary STEM events are Thursday and Friday.
So the isn't the gym at the or the
Cafeteria?
In the cafeteria.
Oh, in the cafeteria, right?
It's in the
Okay.
cafeteria,
Right,
and
okay.
where it's a release day, we won't be serving lunches that day. So
Right.
that works out really well.
Oh, sorry, I was just chatting here.
Come on with the side comment.
Thank you very much. It's your turn.
So is that why school committee member Callahan just left the room? He didn't want to hear the superintendent's report?
It's the 3.5
Should I wait for him to get
He
back?
had that crossed off on his list over here already.
It's all words.
That's right. Maybe we'll wait for him to get back.
No. Should be done by the time he gets back.
I just wanted to give just a few updates. We've been talking about the consultants that have been working with us, and Dr. Cataldo, and I have Dr. Papagiotis and Dr. Cataldo. I just gave you their resumes and their expertise, and Dr. Cataldo's working with myself and Christina Gentili, looking at special education and different focus areas for us, and my goal is, I think, on the 17th of June to kind of give an action plan on addressing special educations along with Christina Gentili. But we're looking at population trends, cost impact, debt runoff, out-of-district placements, our tiered intervention programs, really with a focus next year on DCAP, which is the accommodations in the general ed classroom, making that a priority, and settlements first, district placements, and there's a lot of budgetary review that we're doing with Dr. Cataldo at this time, so I'm excited about that and working with her. Dr. Papagiotis has been working with our administration, the principals, as part of that, through ed reform and school-based management, and really providing our principals with professional development regarding the management. And she's been working on scheduling and looking at the aspects there, law and policies, teacher eval, legal issues when it happens with personnel, and along with student discipline. And then we kind of took a shift where some of the, she was meeting in the fall with individual principals, some of our newer principals and the administration coming in. And really the second half, we've been focusing on the principal teams. And that's why you see a lot more collaboration with the middle school and the high school teams, and then also at the Bres and the Mullen. So that's been a focus for us in giving our administration some professional development. We have good news to report. Overall, with the work of Kathy Riccio, the Comprehensive School Health Services Grant, we received, and the details will come shortly with that, but it's $75,000 for a minimum of 4 years. And I also, Nancy London, our city grant writer, collaborated with us on this grant, and we're really excited. The grant can last up for 10 years if we meet our benchmarks. So we don't have all the line items where we're putting this funding right now, but we do know we're looking for assistance with the Home for Little Wanderers that we're bringing in. And the PASS program, which ties to the Positive Alternative Student Suspensions, And that's some of the work that, with the vaping and the resources there. So we're excited about that, and it was a team effort, but really Kathy Riccio and Nancy London really put that together. So we're really excited about that. That's going to be a great funding for us. The walk and the bike to school week, I had a lot of fun. I chose to walk to school with the Bresnahan. I wasn't going to run
From
or ride a
Salem?
bike.
From Salem?
Yeah, from Salem. I started a couple weeks ago. I just got here. But that was a great event. I got to walk in. Officer Tierney was there. It was a great community event with the Bres. And then that also happened throughout the district. So that was wonderful. The Iftar Boston Wayland Mosque, Alphonse Khan invited my family and I to this great event through the Human Rights Commission. So we had an opportunity to attend a mosque and really learn about the Islamic religion. And it was awesome. And I was truly honored to be invited. My daughters and I had a great time to really learn about all the different cultures. And we had a lot of fun, and the food was excellent. So, which is
The Attorney General was there, I hear.
Yes, the Attorney General was there, and it was wonderful. So I just want to thank her and her family for inviting myself and my daughters. It was great. Tying back the District Attorney's Office, Jonathan Blodgett, his safety summit. Some great ideas in the sense we heard a lot of different topics on cybercrime and inappropriate use with sexting and applications. A state police officer, James Downing, really gave an overview that I think would be beneficial, I think, down the road of having that type of presentation here for the parents, just because as much as technology evolves, a lot of these apps are evolving. And I think parents, it would be helpful for them to see what's out there. And then the other piece is a great presentation on vaping and addiction. A lot of new information on that. And what's sad about some of these Juuls, which is they're called, they have the same amount of nicotine in one Juul as an entire pack of cigarettes. So when we're looking at addiction to nicotine, the students are taking in an incredible amount of nicotine, and they become addicted very, very quickly. And I think the work that Andy's doing along with Angela and Kathy Riccio is really going to address that and really get our students help instead of looking just to suspend. And then the last piece, the Beacon Coalition, we had our Newburyport Youth Services, we had our luncheon for the mental health providers, networking luncheon I got to attend with the mayor. And then also last week, the asset builder for Newburyport Youth Services, where regionally we shared best practices, and that was a breakfast that I got to attend.
The work
So-
of Tina Bowes and the work that she's doing
Yes.
through the Tower Foundation.
Right.
And working with Triton and working with Amesbury and having these kids get up and do presentations of different projects they've been working on to build assets. And it was just really good, really good breakfast.
Exactly. It was, I can't say enough about Newburyport Youth Services and Annie Egmont and her team and the collaboration we have. So it was a great week, way to end working with them this year, and very successful year. So there you go.
Superintendent Gallagher.
Yes.
I caught Dr. Cataldo's name, but who was the doctor that was working with the principal?
Dr. Papagiotis? Yeah. I'll come over before we leave, and I'll give you the spelling of that one.
Thank you. Subcommittee reports. Joint Ed has not met. Finance meets tomorrow morning. Policy has met and given its report.
For breakfast.
And you have, I'm sorry, was it?
What's for breakfast tomorrow? Who's bringing breakfast? Sean? For the budget meeting.
For Brian.
Yeah.
You don't do breakfast, but we don't have Nick on the committee. We gotta have Nick.
And Nick, you sent around a copy of
Yeah,
some
the
specific-
superintendent's evaluation report, I sent around the form. It has the district goals written in there, so we don't need to go back and copy them. But I did send a copy of the district goals because Superintendent Gallagher gave us a list of the kinds of activities that were tactics and strategies that were supporting those objectives. And so that will give you a good idea as to what kinds of things to look for when it comes to summary of evidence on how he's doing. The other point that I would like to make is that there are two sections, one where we're taking a look at progress against the goals, and then we're taking a look at a second section, which is taking a look at how proficient the superintendent is in a series of 4 different standards, which are the same standards that we've been applying year after year after year. In general, we believe that most superintendents will be getting proficient. Proficient is not a negative score. It means the superintendent is where we expect him to be. With new superintendents, you've got more leeway if you believe he needs more time to prove his proficiency at a certain area, just write it in your comments. The last thing that I would say in terms of the evaluation is please try to keep your comments to bullet points, because it makes it much easier to gather all of the input and have it in a way that the superintendent can read through it quickly and learn the gist of what we're trying to say to him as a committee.
And all of these, the document becomes a public document.
It will become a public document, but until such time as we compile it and present it in a public meeting, those are individual responses not to be shared.
Did I see, I don't think I saw a date of when you'd like these returned to you.
I haven't set a date, and that was part of what we need to define. We would like to get the evaluation done
Before the end of June.
before the end of June, in which case mid-June is when I would need them. June 15th.
Okay.
Do we need to talk about this at a meeting?
Huh?
Do we need to talk about this at a meeting after?
Yes. Yes.
Like after you compiled it?
After I compile it, we present it at a meeting.
Okay, so
that
then
would
you
be
need
the
it in
first
time to.
July meeting.
We don't have July meetings.
Well, we have our retreat on 31st.
Do we have August meetings?
No, well,
We open up.
sometimes. So June is the 3rd and the 17th is our last meeting before the retreat.
Okay, if you can get it to me by the 10th, I
There
can
are
have it
some-
ready for the 15th.
There are August meetings.
Yeah, I mean,
We'd like to, I thought we had set a policy that we would try to get the superintendent's
Yep.
evaluation completed by the end of
That-
June.
So you want it by
because
June-
Desi needs it.
June 10th?
June 10th, Monday, June 10th?
Monday, June 10th, please, by midnight. And I will have it ready
or
for the...
11:58, whichever comes first. Do I have a motion?
Hey, just one more final
Oops,
thing, sorry. Tomorrow night, 21st, school committee budget is being reviewed by the city council. They start with Whittier at 6, and then school committee is at 6:30.
We also talked about the athletic feet group, I guess,
Yep.
right? Whatever you want to call that. So, Sean, what were you thinking? How do you see those people reporting back to the school committee?
I would think at the June subcommittee, right? We should have recommendations from Kyle
Yes.
and his committee regarding athletic user fees.
And they're going to do public meetings, that group too?
I believe so.
Like
I
you said,
think, right.
I would like to see it do multiple ones because, you know,
Correct.
one person shows up and. You know,
Correct. So I think the idea is, at the finance subcommittee for the recommendations presented there, and then, looking at the user fee structure, and then a public meeting, and then with discussion as we move into
It's
next year.
Kyle and Mike Testa, right? And a group of parents.
Yeah,
They're
it's
doing
a,
this.
it's a, some parents, Kyle.
Can we have an end date for that too, similar to the thing we have with the high school guys? Like, so that we know that they're gonna have X amount of public meetings at,
Correct.
here or whatever.
Correct.
But they have an answer
Mhm.
or a recommendation, I guess, by a specific date. Because again, I just don't want to see that dragging on forever, and then all of a sudden it's, 2021.
It's not theirs.
You said?
I think so.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
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 All in favor?
Aye.
I'm not paying nobody nothing. When was the last time you paid me $1? Thank you.